Race fans and drivers are a nostalgic bunch. We pine for the days of old and often wear our rose tinted glasses whilst reminiscing about how racing used to be. While racing in the real world has no way of stopping progress, the beauty of sim racing means we can step back in time to truly get a glimpse at how motorsports must have been for the heroes of the past. Today, the majors will do just that as we get ready to watch the 1968 US Grand Prix. And you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing Channel and the iRacing Esports Network. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Adam Lindgren and Peter Mackay. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Watkins Glen held this race for many years, and though the layout is only a close approximation of what these old F1 cars ran, it's close enough. Let's head to our track guide to see what the Glen holds in store. Welcome to Watkins Glen International. Situated in upstate New York, just south of the Finger Lakes, this track has seen it all. Few road circuits can boast hosting Formula One, IndyCar, NASCAR, and IMSA during its history. Though it did have a brief fallow period in the early 80s, thanks to the investment of local companies, it's grown into one of the premier road tracks in the U.S. With 4 layouts to choose from that range between 2.5 and 3.5 miles in length, lap times can vary greatly. But it also means it's suitable for lots of different levels of racing, from amateur to pro. The one thing that stays consistent no matter which car and which layout you're using is that Watkins Glen means speed. Many of the straights are very long, and the majority of the corners are fast sweepers. Some of them include a surprising amount of banking as well. Combine that with the proximity of the barriers, and this historic circuit retains a very old-school feel. Drivers in lesser-powered cars can expect drafting battles, while higher-powered machinery will test the skill and bravery of their pilots. Some of the turns are visually iconic, such as the carousel and the S's. Others, like the inner loop, the chute, and turn 9, greatly challenge even the expertly skilled. And of course, we haven't even mentioned the drastic amount of elevation change drivers experience. Between its rich history and popularity among drivers, this track stays busy and seems likely to be that way for a long, long time. And there we see a little bit about the track as a whole, but this is something of a unique layout in today's time. So to get us in the mood and kind of take us back in time to 1968, here's Adam Lindgren with the track details.
Watkins Glen International, a classic American road course. A history rooted in public road course racing, this classic 2.45 mile or 3.94 kilometer 7-turn layout takes the short layout raced by NASCAR and removes the inner loop, making the run from the top of the S's to the outer loop a straight line shot. But these brave drivers must tackle this circuit with the formidable Lotus 49. This amazing invention of man and machine can produce 400 brake horsepower, propelling the drivers to speeds topping 180 miles per hour. Though this simple circuit may seem easy for some, the lack of any downforce on this car means a careful right foot will be needed to survive the sweeping corners of the Glen. Passing around here is another matter entirely, requiring a deft touch on the steel drum brakes into the sharper corners and a bravery to stick it out around the outside of the shallower ones. All in all, it's going to take true grit and determination to see the checkered flag tonight, Joe Peak.
Thank you for that, Adam. And well, instead of starting the race, we're starting with qualifying. They're doing it a bit like the modern F1 here, where the top 10 are going to sort out the grid, and they have 20 minutes to qualify here today. As many laps as they want out there, which they're just getting started, I believe, on their first time laps. Christian Challoner seems to be among the first who is going to put a time in. Here we see the number 37. And I'm glad to see that we've got a lot of drivers a lot of teams who have put some classic paints on. Peter, you and I have already started nerding out, and I'm sure we'll be doing a lot of that during this race. But I'm so excited. Behind the Indy 500 they do every year, this has to be my most anticipated race this season.
Oh, I'm going to have to really be careful just to rein in my enthusiasm, because this car is... Well, it's one of the most significant cars in Grand Prix history, the Lotus 49. Of course, the first car to ever house the legendary Cosworth DFV engine. And of course, had most of its victories with my hero, Jim Clark. And Jim Clark played a huge part in, although he passed away long before I was even born, my grandfather was a massive fan, and he kind of passed on that passion for Jimmy and the Lotuses. And yeah, it's great to see them kind of immortalized in the sim, because of course one of these cars in the real world is completely priceless. They're all wrapped away safely, and to have them so well simulated here by iRacing and have this quality of field driving them, it's going to be a real pleasure to commentate on the race tonight.
We've got our first times in. Challoner's on the provisional pole, but it's by 0.8 of a second around a lap that is only a bit over a minute. So this is a huge gap that he's managed to pull on everybody behind him. We're still waiting on Halleck and Schmeier to put times in. So I'm only seeing 9 drivers in the session currently. I'm trying to check to see who is the 10th that we're missing. There you can see Challoner has not improved on his second lap, but Smith, we're waiting on him to come around for his second. He's the next one down, Eric. And we'll see if he can go any quicker to try and close that down, or maybe for some reason get quicker than Christian. A little bit behind the scenes, pulling the curtain back. Peter actually volunteered to be a part of this one. I was very happy to do so. Knowing Jim Clark's history, I kind of wanted a Scott with us on this broadcast. Smith did not go faster at him that time through, and it looks like Wade Hayes, the next one behind him, might have a chance to get on the front row if he can improve.
Yeah, and it's also awesome to see just how fun it is to watch all of these drivers go around this track. The fastest way around this track is with a little bit of getting a little bit outside the envelope of where the tires want to grip. That's actually the fastest way around. Christian Challoner is going to take it back to the pits, but Wade Hayes coming around that final corner, he's also going to take it into the pits. So these drivers have done 2 fast laps. They're going to come back in and get some fresh fuel and tires and then go back out. Now, the same qualifying rules that applied to our modern F1 qualifying apply to this one, as Brian McGreevy crosses the line and goes almost a second faster, up to 107.8. But that means that if you get stranded out on track, you have to drive it back to the pits, and if you take a tow, you are out of the qualifying session.
Fire finally put time down. That's going to put him up to 4th. Second row for Jeff. That's one of the best starting positions we've seen from him all season long. Austin Espy, what about him? He's down in 8th as he comes across to the line. It's not going to be quicker. That was a slow lap from him. Must have been an out lap. 107.8 currently from him. The good news is, even though it's a very short lap, only 9 cars out there, they can get plenty of space to try and get themselves some room. In fact, I'd almost wager, Peter, that maybe it would be a bit helpful to get in the slipstream of a car ahead, because, well, there's no downforce and aero wake to worry about in these cars.
No, of course not. Yeah, that would have played a huge part in the racing between these cars. You can imagine when they went to places like Monza and here at Watkins Glen as well. But Watkins Glen does have the odd little kind of undulation and little bump here and there. And as we've seen, quite graphically on the camera, you see how much play and travel there is in the suspension. You see this almost looks like a canoe, the kind of fuselage or the chassis of the car, with the engine acting as a full-on stress member. It's an amazing piece of Grand Prix history, the Lotus 49, and the sheer performance of this car is just mind-blowing as well, because it only weighs about 530 kilos, or 1,100 pounds in US money, and it's got, as I say, over 400 horsepower. So, and with a tire with not the grip we're used to today, shall we say? So it requires a deft skill to master.
Because this was my main car that I drove on iRacing for a lot of years. Just unfortunately, haven't had the time to practice and compete. We saw on screen Espedy moved up to 4th, and Wade Hayes did not improve, but he's still sitting slightly ahead of Austin on paper, but he's behind him on track and pulling that slipstream that I was talking about. So I have a feeling that'll help that number 33 as we now watch Christian Challoner still at just shy of 9/10 ahead of Eric Smith. It was a quick lap, but he was about 2/10 off his fastest. Worth noting, it's quite hot out on the track, even though that it's towards, well, I guess it's not in the fall here in the sim. It's scheduled in May, even though traditionally it would be 110 degrees Fahrenheit, with quite a bit of wind, it looks like.
Yeah, the wind shouldn't affect them too much considering the hefty weight of these cars and the lack of aerodynamics to really get the car pushing around. But it's that track temperature that is going to have these grooved radials really working very, very hard to try and get any grip down. It's a very hard compounded tire, which means that the tires can last the entire length of the race that we're coming up to, but it also means that it's really hard to get any grip down.
Sunshine coming out now, which is not what they want in qualifying. Hayes had went up to second temporarily, and Smith takes it right back. It's still a close fight between himself and Wade Hayes, and Eric has now got it down to just over 5/10 behind Christian Challenger. The Brit is remaining the man to beat.
And he beats his previous time by by 2/1000ths of a second as he crosses the line. So he improves just a tiny bit and is gonna just kind of try and eke away from Eric Smith. But as these guys continue to run, if the track temperature continues to creep up with the beating sun down on it like this might be the fastest times we see today. Austin Espy coming across the line. He's not going to do better. He's 3 seconds off his previous time. So starting another flying lap to try and possibly get a better time. And Brian McGreevy coming across the line now. He's trying to beat a 107.8. He's going to cross with a 107.862, which is actually slower than his last time.
Just shy of his best. Swaby now down and across, not able to improve on that 107.1. He'll stay in P4. From my experience, both in covering and in racing these cars, the difference in temperature can affect how you want to set the car up. And often heard some of the fast drivers talking about having a hot setup and a cold setup ready to go. So I wonder if we'll see that as well with our drivers today, waiting to see what they get when they go to the grid after qualifying is over. 10 more minutes left to go, so still half of it here. If drivers think they can find time, they've still got opportunities. Plenty of laps can be fit in with that much on the clock.
Yeah, you think 110 degrees Fahrenheit track temperature, that's really, really high. And of course, that's just going to make the track really, really greasy and slippy. And that's the last thing these cars need is a reduction in grip and adhesion, but all part of the art of mastering this car as well. And it's also, isn't it cool to see the helmets with the open face helmets with probably the opening iteration of the original iteration of a COVID mask with the goggles on there as well. And for me, the sight of a British Racing Green Lotus with a navy blue peaked cap, that's with, of course, leather gloves handmade in the borders of Scotland as well, don't forget.
Of course. Now we watch Austin Espedy coming down towards the penultimate turn 6 in this layout, and you can see how much the nose dips. It almost reminds me of when NASCAR races here, and you can certainly see those cars really, when they accelerate, when they brake, how much the chassis just moves around underneath them. This car very much the same. This time across the line, still not faster than his 107.2 for Austin Espedy. So we were talking about before we went on air that this is not actually how the track was back in 67 and 68 when this car competed here. There's a couple more corners after the carousel that shortened that long run down what is the penultimate turn. So here's my question to you two. Do you know where the starting line was in 1967 and 68? And I'll give you a hint, it's not where it is now.
Adam?
I was going to guess it was going to be after the outer loop and before the left-hander following it.
Peter, no guesses?
I'm going to guess. Now, I think you've told me this before, and because I always hang on to your every word, Joe, I can't remember. No, I think it's now the turn 1, the right-hander, which we now know as the 90. I believe that used to be the penultimate corner. It used to be the final corner. So is it the start-finish line? Oh, no, sorry, my apologies. It was still the first corner, so the start-finish straight was just after turn 1 as it would be now. Is that
correct? Yes, it used to be after the 90 and before the S's that they started this race. That was.
See, I do listen to you, Joe.
Yes. I was going to say, I thought I did tell you at one point, but just in case, I figured for our audience, we'd bring that little bit of trivia out. So, like I said, it's not perfect. They can't go exactly how they did back at Watkins Glen, but it's still fun to get pretty close here as we've watched Wade Hayes complete another lap, but stays in P3. It seems to be minimal returns at this point, boys, because I'm not seeing many drivers go purple on our screens.
Yeah, and Eric Smith almost going into the barriers around the outer loop. What I'm seeing right now, guys, is that this track, as it's heating up, it's getting a lot slicker, and these cars are getting looser than is productive. Now, as I mentioned before, being loose is the fastest way around this track, but you only want to be a certain amount of loose. And so these cars are starting to get looser than is productive, and we're going to see Brian McGreevy. Looks like he's actually dealing with a little bit of a tight car right now.
Doesn't it? Yeah, he looks like he's maybe just putting that little bit too much of a steering input in as he comes into pit lane. But yeah, well spotted, Adam. That's definitely not getting the turn in and the bite that you'd want from the front end. And Joe, you were telling me that the way that the differentials is set up in this car is a key part to performance.
Absolutely. Both when I was driving it and from reading the faster drivers, because I was never honestly one of the faster guys in this car, the differential really kind of affects how it accelerates off the corners and how it comes into the corners. So we saw a lot of sharing information and trying to tweak that to get it to how you want. Now, the cool thing is this is, compared to at least modern F1 cars, such a minimalist car. There's so little to it that it really is kind of, well, what's your driving style? And then set it up for that. You don't have to try and fit it to what the car wants. You fit it to what you want, and then drive it that way, at least to a degree, as we continue to ride on board our pole sitter here. Challoner seems to be pretty smooth with it. I have seen drivers in the past, Uwe Trangerade comes to mind, who really likes to get that rear end out and is okay with a loose car. Now he eats up his tires that way, but he's figured out how to make it fat, and so has Christian Challoner, a 106.2.
He just found the speed, and that might be on the last lap of his run. Another thing that I noticed has been really changing the pace on these cars is also the fuel load. As they get further on in the race and further on the qualifying sessions, they can drop tenths per lap, every single lap, depending on how low the fuel is.
Yeah, they must burn the fuel. I mean, the Cosworth DFV, designed by Keith Duckworth, in its earliest form, it must have been a really thirsty piece of kit, but of course only with 530 kilos or about 1,100 pounds to push around. It could almost afford to be thirsty. And actually, the engine that it replaced was the BRM H16, so it probably felt like a Prius in comparison at the time.
One thing I love about this car too is when you set it up in iRacing, it's not just in gallons or in liters. It's measured in imperial gallons, which I assume is what they measured it in back in the day.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. And also, of course, this Watkins Glen circuit, of course, it's a real favourite even today, and but really solidified and probably an era of Formula One in the United States that I'm sure the owners of Formula One would love to return to in terms of popularity and the place on the calendar that it held. But of course, this race that we're emulating today in 1968 US Formula One Grand Prix, of course, 1968 was the first year that the Watkins 6 Hours of the Glen run, and it was won by a Gulf GT40 of Jackie X and Bianchi.
Not the Bianchi that people might be thinking of. This was the previous Bianchi.
Yes. Oh, and it looks like Brian McGreevy actually got loose coming through the S's on the right-hander of the S's and made contact with the outside wall. He's had to take a tow, which will make him not eligible to complete any more laps in this session, unfortunately. Looks like Adam Halleck's also out of his machine, so multiple drivers having a little bit of trouble today.
Worth noting that Eric Smith is also in pit lane. He can get back out to start one, but he's been in there a while. I think he is done and content with second place. I'm kind of watching Wade Hayes to see if he can have a shot at it. We saw Lyndon Swaby. He's not too far behind Wade. As soon as I say that, Espedy steals fourth away from Swaby. So we are seeing a little bit of improvement towards the end of it. I know that we have a bit of lettering on the sides of some of these cars, and we can't excuse that a little bit because the Lotus 49 was also the first one to have sponsorship in F1.
Oh, yeah, that was my best fact, Joe, and you've stolen it.
Sorry. It's gonna be a competition between us of coming up with
Nerd
the most
off.
obscure
Nerd
facts.
off.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, that's a good one. I'll get Joe with that one. But actually, that was now. It wasn't actually in Championship Formula One, though. It was, of course, when Jim Clark took the car down to the Tasman Series to win the 67-68 Tasman Series, and then it was put back to traditional Lotus British Racing Green for the South African Grand Prix.
Interesting. I do know. I remember seeing it in Monaco. I think it was 1970, in the gold leaf colors. So I know at one point it did run them. By that time, it was the Lotus 49B at that point. As we're watching Christian Challenger see if he can continue to embarrass everybody with his ability in this car. No, that is an outlap. He was on a slow one there. So Wade Hayes is going to follow him in the number 33. He has got 8 tenths to make up if he wants the pole, but only a tenth and a half for second. 106.9 is just half a tenth shy of Eric Smith.
Now, here's an interesting thing. Austin Espedy just took a pit stop. He's coming out to try and get one more lap in, but he's going to be hard-pressed to get around in time considering they're doing 106s, and he just came out of the pits at 104, so it's going to be hard for him to get on that last flying lap. So we're going to have to keep our eyes on that as Lyndon Swaby is going to come around to set another time and start his final flying lap as well.
Yeah, I think it'll be just barely. So peg leg down and across. 107.3, definitely not quicker than his best. He'll stay in P5, trying to get back onto the second row to claim it from Espedy.
Eric Smith also out there trying to get that final lap going. He just crossed the line as well. Christian Challenger is going to come across the line and start his final flying lap, but is this lap faster? Not quite. He's slower by 2 tenths. That would have tied his previous pole time before he set the new fastest one. So, Wade Hayes looks like he's loose and he's going to call it a day.
Giving it up. Espedy is going to make it to the line in time. We saw Challenger still just booking it, trying to get more out of it. He knows he's got nothing to lose, really, except maybe that mental edge and trying to improve. As the checkered flag is now out, Kevin Hill's going to be the first to take it. If he does take it, as he's a little slow, he's going to head into pit lane, and he's not even going to take it into pit lane. He's just going to park it and say that he is done. Eric Smith next, the closest to maybe try and challenge Challenger for the pole position here today. As he comes out of the final corner, he's
damage
a little
on the front
slow,
there.
and he's got damage, yeah.
And it looks like Austin Espedy has also outbraked himself into the outer loop. So unfortunately, Austin looks like he's on a little bit of a slower lap. So he's not going to close that 1.5 tenths up to Wade Hayes. But Jeff Schmeier is only 1.7 behind Lyndon Swaby. So he might have an opportunity to jump himself up into the top 5.
Espedy going to actually take the lap. We haven't seen anybody actually take the checkered flag. No, he's not. Schmeier is going to be the only one that actually goes by the wave checkers here today. And it's a 107.4. That's about a tenth off his best. He'll stay put in 6th place. That is it for our qualifying. Before we go to break, we do have a few points that we want to go over with the championship, because, of course, there is a championship involved here. So let's take a look at the drivers' standings real quick. Christian Challenger, as we mentioned, has been dominating this season, and he's got more than a win's worth over Travis Worling currently. Considering the pace he's showing today, it looks like he's not going to fall below that 1-win marker here after today, unless something dramatic happens. Steve Driscoll is close behind Worling and still challenging. Liam Quinn, a distant 4th, who is only got the tiniest of margins down to Brian Barnes. Adam, what about the team's championship?
Well, Kinetic Racing currently leads. They've brought a unashamed homage to Jim Clark for their paint scheme, which they're running today, and also their logo design has been redesigned for this particular race as well. They're leading by a really decent margin over Unorthodox Motorsports. It's still easy to close up on, but definitely something worth noting. Dog Bear Red and Dog Bear White are in third and fourth, and they're fairly close as well. Definitely in contention to see that position swap. And Sector 5 Racing, not out of it either. They've gained some points in the last couple of rounds, and they're looking to possibly get up there and fight for third.
And we have the Legends points, which is for drivers who are over 55 here in the majors. Give them something to fight for. Peter, I know you haven't joined that club yet, but why don't you go through where we sit on those?
Well, I certainly sport facial hair that would be suitable within that club, that's for sure. Brian Barnes leads at the moment on 3,046 points. Kevin Hill is just 318 points back, and Rob Gall 414 points back. Wayne Hutchison sits in fourth right now, and Brian McGreevy is in fifth for the Legends.
All right, as we won't have a race out here. I know that Christian Challenger's having some fun taking to the grid right now, but we're going to let him have that fun as we have a quick break. We'll come back with the race session here on the Global Sim Racing channel as round 12 for the majors. The 1968 U.S. Grand Prix will be back in just a moment. Welcome back here to Watkins, Glen. We're getting ready to watch the Majors 1968 U.S. Grand Prix. They're just in the warm-up session now. We've had qualifying, so we'll go over our grid soon enough. Before we get to that, we should probably educate our viewers on exactly what this race is going to be like. So, Adam, why don't you run down our race detail?
Absolutely. This is round 12 of 14 of the regular season of the Majors series here. They're running the Lotus 49 here around Watkins Glen. It's going to be 108 laps today, and that may seem like a lot, but when they're doing laps at around, 117, 116, that's going to go by pretty quickly. They're going to be doing a standing start today, so it's going to be a very quick start for them. One spare car is available for these guys, so if they wreck this thing out or they get some significant damage, they can bring it in, jump out of that thing, jump into another one, and drive away. And they also have 26 incident cap. I don't see anybody reaching that, though, because when you touch the grass around here, things can get pretty bad.
Yeah, it's very easy to have things go wrong in a hurry since these cars do not slow down very quickly. But we want to remind you, if you're looking to take advantage of GSRC's over 1 million global monthly impressions, from official series sponsorships to commercial placements, we have advertising options customizable to suit your company's needs. Follow the link in the description below to learn a little bit more. Also, this race, as all the Majors races have this season, is raising money for charity. And for this round, it is for METAvivor. METAvivor is dedicated to the specific fight of women and men living with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. At the time of METAvivor's founding, no organization was dedicated to funding research for the disease, and no patient groups were speaking out about the dearth of stage 4 cancer research. While more and more people have taken up the cry for more stage 4 research, METAvivor remains the sole U.S. organization dedicated to awarding annual stage 4 breast cancer research. To find out how you can get involved, check out metavivor.org. Big thanks to them. The way, if you're curious how they raise the funds for this, well, drivers, other than the qualifying session we just saw a few minutes ago, are allowed to qualify as many times as they want. However, the first one is free, and after that, they have to pay for the qualifying sessions. All those payments go towards the charity each round. Really great way for them to raise money for a good cause each time. We just have, it looks like, about 3 minutes left to go, actually, I should say, before we get to racing today. We were talking a lot about the uniqueness of this car, the difficulty of this car. Peter, I know you had been doing a lot of practice lately. I mean, explain to the audience who may be even on iRacing and race a lot, who haven't jumped in this thing, why it's so different from everything else.
Well, hopefully it's better to ask me to be the non-expert, and then I'll hand back to you as the expert. Of course, a near winner at Virginia International Raceway in this very car, Joe, from my notes. But yes, it really took me by surprise. I have actually driven this car on another well-known simulator made in Italy, and it's actually it's amazing the difference in the handling even between that. But if you're used to the kind of more regular cars on the iRacing service and you hop into this thing, it is really quite a shock. It takes a lot of kind of fiddling with to get the setup right as well. But it's one of those cars where you've almost got to kind of wipe the slate clean, wipe the chalkboard clean, and basically build a new driving style, because the car wants something completely different. It's on cross-ply tires. It's completely different to the tire that we have today. And also, of course, as you can see, the suspension is massive, and the braking power compared to pretty much any modern racing car, let alone a modern Grand Prix car, is just it's completely unrecognizable. So it's such a that at the end of the day, that's what makes it such a special car to drive, and it has very much its own character. And I think it's one way to prove of just how clever the guys at iRacing actually are, because being able to simulate and replicate these differences between all the cars they have on the service for average Joes like me is where you can easily tell the difference very quickly. To me, that's just the one of the really amazing things about the iRacing simulator and the job that they do.
And as we ride on board with Eric Smith, he's currently gone fastest in the warm-up. That's not going to be the fastest way as he keeps it from wrecking there, going through the grass on the exit of the penultimate turn. I will say, other than that almost victory that I missed out on in VIR, I did take one win in my Lotus 49 career, and that was at Summit Point. It was many years ago at this point, but I still am able to say I've won at least one in all these years. It's not been able to be repeated since, but well, at least I've broke that duck and don't have to worry about it anymore. Christian Challoner goes up to second of the timing sheets, which is to be expected the way he's been so far today in this car. Interesting to note about him as well, he also hopped in it in an oval race that the Lotus 49 community held recently and absolutely wiped the field, considering he is a pro-level oval driver. So no big surprises there. With the warm-up session now over, our grid is set. Let's go through our starting order for today. Challoner on the pole will be followed by Eric Smith in second place. It is Wade Hayes starting third and Austin Espedy in the fourth position. Lyndon Swaby will be on the inside of row 3 with Jess Schmeier to his outside. Kevin Hill was good enough for 7th. Brian McGreevy was 8th and Adam Halleck 9th. Liam Quinn was the one we did not see, and he'll start out in 10th.
Brian Barnes is going to start 11th with Wayne Hutchison starting 12th. Bob Beltrami lining up at 13th with Ryan Steele 14th. Dick Mueller is going to start off 15th today with Jason Wallet starting off in 16th position. Nick Kuhn good enough for 17th with Lyndon Kinchlow, Rob Gall, and William Fletcher rounding out the top 20.
In 21st position is Aaron Roofs, David K. Hall, and Brett Trozin in 23rd. We're nearly ready to go, guys.
So 23 cars in the field. That will be plenty for a good race. Trust me on that one. As the lights are up, the engines start to rev. The green flag is out here for round 12 in the majors. Challoner gets a decent start. Not a great one for Wade Hayes. And it looks like Espedy might have a shot at third as they come down into the 90 for the first time. He's going to swing around, get into that podium spot. Behind them, it looks all clean as they now head up the S's.
Fantastic start for Austin Espedy making that sweeping turn. Wade Hayes now in the back seat, though. Look at this. Eric Smith closing up to the back of Christian Challoner as they start to get onto the first straight of the day. Remember, these cars are all laden down with fuel and still have those cold tires. There's a pass going on for the 6th position in the background, but Christian Challoner is going to lead them into the outer loop with Eric Smith very tight behind him.
Closed a lot, and that slipstream still side by side between Quinn and Swaby. That's for 8th position. 7th position, rather. Looks like Quinn is going to take that. A few drivers did decide to take it slow at the start just to try and get themselves on their own. It is that difficult to drive this machine that even at this level of skill, many of the drivers are electing to just fall to the back. Coming through, our top drivers finish our first lap where we've got a hard fight between Schmeier and Hayes, and I think Beltrami's had problems. He is off course out of the penultimate turn.
Yep, he's already had a wreck, so we will get back to that at some point. But right now, the action is absolutely at the front of the field as we're watching multiple drivers struggle to make it through turn 1. It's very tight and twisty. That's Wade Hayes on the back of Jess Schmeier. Wade Hayes all the way back to 5th that they're starting in that 2nd position.
It looks like the slipstream is helping out Smith a fair bit here, so I'm not sure if Christian Challoner is going to have this the easy way.
It doesn't appear so, yeah. And of course, Christian Challoner is going to be the one who's putting in the hard work here as well. And it's a long race, so you want to be able just to settle into the rhythm nicely. And when you're being chased by Smith and Espedy here, it's not going to be a relaxing start to the race for Christian Challoner, that's for sure. But yeah, just coming back to your comment, Joe, about at the beginning of the race, of course, Watkins, Glen, the opening S is going up there. There is no runoff at all. And if you make even the slightest mistake, this car will not forgive you at all. And then that's the race over before it's even begun. So, you know, it's a long race, 108 laps. It's good just to ease into it and get into that rhythm.
I think we've had an issue with Aaron Roofs. Adam?
Yeah, he had a spin in the outer loop. He's all the way gone to the back of the field. Multiple drivers really struggling with that outer loop, especially the braking into it. They're locking up those rear tires going into it and spinning that rear end. But man, is it tight fighting up here through the S's in the middle of the pack.
See this group being led by Wade Hayes in 5th place. He's got Hill, Quinn, Swaby, Barnes, McGreevy all behind him. It looks like Hill might be overtaken by Quinn as he takes a peek down into the carousel, but decides better of it. Swinging through the highly banked outer loop. They come back out onto the backstretch now, the second backstretch, I guess you could almost say, and Quinn very close behind, tucked under that Ford Cosworth, but it is not much braking into this corner, and Hill is going to stay ahead.
The top three have broken out by 2 seconds now over Jeff Schmeier, who's currently in fourth, and Jeff is currently leading this train of cars around. He's got about a second back to Wade Hayes, but that's tight between Kevin Hill, Liam Quinn, Lyndon Swaby, Brian Barnes, and Liam Quinn's got a great run now on Kevin Hill as he looks to the inside for one.
Be able to get the car side by side, but Hill is strong coming through the middle of the corner. He needs to be strong off the corner because now they head uphill through the S's. He will be able to shut down Quinn once more and stay ahead. He'll get the slipstream at the top of the hill. You talked about these S's. I can tell you still get wheel spin in fourth gear coming through this corner, and he's struggling to hold on to it as he once again gets the run, looks to the inside. Hill not defending, trying to hold on as they come up to the braking, down into the carousel one more time, and it's going to be side by side, Peter.
Yeah, of course, you said that even in fourth up to fifth gear, you almost want to upshift just to calm the car down, but then you drop out of the power band. It's got a lot of horsepower, this engine, but you've got to have it in. It's a pretty narrow power band for a normally aspirated motor. So yeah, it's really, really delicate driving style required from this engine as well. And I mean, 400 horsepower through a car of this weight, really, really tricky indeed.
Did lose the spot as Quinn moves himself up to 6, and he might lose another because here comes Swaby. The Kinetic driver is trying to see if he can get himself another position. They'll be side by side through the S's. That is going to be extremely hairy, and Hill decides better of it, backs out, and slots in the line.
Yeah, but is this going to make him susceptible to Brian Barnes on the straight? Will Hill be able to get that speed back up? It looks like he's been able to maintain that speed and pick it back up, and Brian Barnes now tucked right in under his, I was going to say rear bumper, but gearbox is a better description with these machines. Brian Barnes looking to the inside, but he's going to back out of it. He does not want to challenge Hill into the outer loop.
Bumper. There's barely any bodywork on these machines as Kevin Hill just having a miserable couple of laps, losing spot after spot. If you're curious about the temperatures, they're very similar, 115 degrees Fahrenheit that the drivers still have on the track surface, but significantly less wind, thankfully. Oh, and Dick Mueller. Dick Mueller is off track.
Oh, as Christian Schellner puts in the fastest lap of the race. Let's have a look then at Dick Mueller's little off-track excursion here. We're heading in towards the end of the lap. We just lost him on camera there.
I think he funded on his own.
Yeah, this was under braking. He actually outbraked himself, unfortunately, going into that left-hander, the penultimate corner, and he actually slammed on the brakes to make sure he didn't hit the car ahead of him, and that's what set him off track.
Just a little bit of a lock-up there, yeah, just on the brake. Of course, the brake pedal is so hard to modulate. Brakes were pretty much an afterthought at this time in the late 1960s compared to out-and-out horsepower. There was certainly no problem there at all. But, Joe, over this kind of Grand Prix distance, what's it? How do these tyres behave over the course of the distance? Do the drivers need to look after them, or can they go full rich throughout the race?
Confession, I actually never got to do a full Grand Prix length, official Grand Prix length. We always ran shorter ones in the official series. So I mean, this is just as much a mystery to me as to what they're going to be like. They're certainly going to be very worn. I can tell you that even the short races, drivers did kind of have to watch out because they could overheat those tires. So I suspect the name of the game is going to be gentleness with the rubber.
Yeah, and speaking of overheating, Joe, the track temperature is starting to get pretty toasty up there. It's 115 degrees Fahrenheit on track. That's 46 degrees Celsius, and that's very, very hot for these drivers. We're jumping on board with Brian Barnes as he's trying to chase down Kevin Hill for the 8th position.
Doesn't take a look yet.
We've had a big wreck in turn 1, actually, Joe, between Brett Trocine and Dick Mueller, who had that previous incident.
Oh, it's gone from bad to worse for Dick. And this was unfortunately Brett just out-braking himself into the 90. Here we've got the replay here. Oh, it almost looked like he was letting him by at that point and maybe didn't quite
Oh,
know the brake marker for the car ahead. And that, of course, sent Dick on his lid. He has since gone into the pits. Not sure if he's going to be rejoining. Bob Beltrami is just coming back out right now, I want to note. So he's
Right.
returning in 22nd.
Yeah, and these drivers, don't worry, they're not completely out of it yet. Once they get their tow, they can pick up that spare car and go back out once again. But having to take your spare car in the first 10 minutes of this race, that's not where you want to be. This is Bob Beltrami getting passed by Christian Challoner, our current race leader. He pulls over to the side.
Challenger's only pulled it away by 9/10 of a second, 7/10 now, as Smith is still feeling the effects of that slipstream. They have dropped Espedy, though.
Sorry, that was Eric Smith getting extremely loose on the entrance to the outer loop. Almost lost it into the inside barrier, but is able to keep it going and maintain his speed to Christian Challoner.
Looking a little bit farther down, Brian McGreevy and Ryan Steele trying to fight for a top 10 here. As we hop on board the nose of Ryan Steele. Camera angles that he couldn't really get in races here back in 1967 and 68. He loves the shots that Dougie Beard is able to give us, though. As they come into the final turn, talked about the S's being like a street course. That part is also very minimal in terms of runoff, much like they probably would have had back in the day. Across the line, it seems he's not going to get a chance into the 90, but it's a very good shot off the corner here for Steele.
of course, we're lucky now as well that we have live timing in real time all the time with the timing screen on the left-hand side, as you can see. But back in the day, it was the drivers' wives and assorted girlfriends who would stand on the pit wall with multiple stopwatches writing down lap charts, which it just amazes me that I personally could never have the patience or the intelligence to keep up with it.
Oh, it's a good move down to the inside into the outer loop. Ryan Steele's got it away from McGreevy. Ryan could come back at him if he is brave, but no, he's going to lift down the stretch towards the penultimate turn. We'll settle for that 11th spot. Not only do we have the live timing and scoring, but our audience can too. If you want to check out your favorite driver and they're not on screen, go check out gsrc.tv. All the live timing and scoring will be there, where every single car will be kept track of. Down to the 90, who is this? As this is the battle between Espedy and Schmeier. I briefly mentioned that Espedy had fallen off to 2.1 seconds. Oh, and Smith has fallen off. Did Smith make a mistake that we didn't catch?
Most likely. I'll take a look at that and go back there. The only time that these camera angles that I can remember being shown on cars like this was in the film Grand Prix, which was filmed around this time, I believe. But Jeff Schmeier putting very hard pressure on Austin Espedy, especially in the outer loop. Austin looking like he's dealing with a little bit of a tight car coming off the corner.
Peter might have this one. It was the 64 or 65 season they filmed Grand Prix.
They actually used the Jim Russell of the Jim Russell Racing School fame, which of course started out at the Snetterton circuit. More of that in a moment, where Jim Russell actually provided some Formula 3 cars, which were kind of dressed up as full-on Grand Prix cars for that particular film, and also provided some little bit of driver coaching as well. Did Jim? But interestingly, talking about Snetterton, the old wartime old converted airfield in the county of Norfolk in England. That was where this car was originally tested and developed, specifically the engine, where Graham Hill had a very short but clear assessment of it. He says, well, it certainly got plenty of squirt.
Sounds like him. Let's head back to 8th position, where Kevin Hill and Brian Barnes are still going at it. We watched them earlier. Barnes has got a great run, and he's got to look down into the outer loop, but he doesn't have the track position. He's given space as Hill goes a little bit wide. Can he carry the speed off of this banking? It's going to be a drag race as they head down to the left-hander. Hill has the advantage with the inside, but he doesn't have the momentum, and he doesn't have the guts as he once again gives way.
Yeah, I mean, this is... even when you're driving in the simulator, you just feel so exposed in this machine. This thing is just a matchbox with wheels. That's one of the reasons why they used to call them matchbox cars. Not only were they located in a matchbox when you got them as toys, but also these things just felt like tinder boxes when you drove them. Kevin Hill feeling that pressure, feeling that risk that he's taking, and he also looks a little bit tight in that machine right now. I can report on Eric Smith and his time lost. That's on raw pace, Joe. No mistakes from the man right now.
Interesting. Wow. He just opened that up big time. We got to go back to Espedy because I think he might have something for Schmeier. No, he backed out of it just as I mentioned it, coming into the carousel once more. Still close, though. We're going to hop on board now with Espedy, who started this race exactly where he sits now, P4, trying to improve to get himself onto the podium. As he goes wide through the penultimate turn, he catches it, keeps it out of the grass critically. But he's going to have to regain some of that ground that he lost. I can tell you, Adam, the openness of these cars spoiled me because when I hopped into GT cars, it felt so claustrophobic, and I kept wanting to have better reference. I liked being able to see the tires and know exactly where I was placing them.
Well, the funny thing is, Joe, is that I say the same thing about GTs going into the higher downforce LMP machines. It just feels so claustrophobic. So I can't imagine if you were someone who used to race the Lotus 49s a lot and then jumped into an LMP1 and tried to look around in there. I mean, the thing would probably just feel like you had blinders on the entire time. Austin Espedy with a decent run through the S's, but Jeff Schmeier got a better exit of the S's. Austin's not quite close enough to do anything through the outer loop, but he's carrying a lot of speed through. Jeff Schmeier outbreaks himself a little bit. Austin's going to try and take a look up the inside.
He's been working on this for a while. Doesn't come across him immediately. Schmeier makes sure to stay off to the left. Oh, and it's good braking there for Austin Espedy. He's going to try it around the outside of the penultimate turn. It is not an easy move to do that, but he pulls it off.
Oof, that took real trust in the grip of the tires there, of which there is not much. And yeah, the number 77 of Espedy moves into provisional podium spot, but long race, the Schmeier in the number 30 machine, he can now take a little bit of a relax and just sit in the draft and watch, maybe do a little bit of studying, a bit of a scholar of Espedy's style, and find out which parts of the track he's strong and which parts of the track he is weak, and keep that information in hand for later on in the race.
Oh, he's very good in a straight line, though. This has nothing to do with aero. He is just good off the corner, even takes a little bit of a peak, but then decides better of it. You have to brake so incredibly early coming into the carousel. The braking distances in this car are shocking if you've never driven it before. Continues to follow right behind that bright green machine, but Schmeier's obviously not given up on spraying the champagne yet.
Absolutely not. He's definitely putting the pressure on Austin. It's interesting to note, watching Christian Challoner's laps versus these guys' laps, and one of the things I've noticed is that these guys are very concerned, it seems like, about that rear end coming around when they go into the braking for the outer loop, whereas Christian Challoner will brake until he just has the practice down where he'll brake until the rear end is at just the right point, and then he'll hit the gas and keep that rear end out around the outer loop in order to get the best speed through there. So it's just fascinating to watch the different lines for the different experienced drivers. Austin Espedy really struggling on the exit of the S's. Jeff Schmeier with a great run. Is he going to take the risk this time? No, he decides to stay behind.
I'll tell you from experience that at least, maybe this is why I wasn't fast, but from how I learned, you kind of drive with the rear of, or steer with the rear of the car on this thing, which is why that diff is so important. Jeff is continuing to hound Espedy here for what is third place currently, and Espedy is going to be a little bit wide there.
And we're going to jump over to P7 because Brian Barnes and Kevin Hill just made it past Lyndon Swaby, who made a mistake on the exit of the S's, and they just kind of drafted right by him. But this battle has been three cars deep for quite a while, and Lyndon Swaby looks like he's a little bit down on power, so maybe something happened to him a little bit earlier that's causing him an issue. He's falling off the back of these guys, but Brian Barnes and Kevin Hill still making it a tight fight there for that 7th position.
Swaby's going to want to try and get those back. He took them quite a few laps ago. Now, the good news is we're still very early in this race. We're just past about 1/10 of it. So a lot of racing left to go. But unlike modern Grand Prix racing, there are no expected pit stops. These things can be fueled up just like the modern ones. They don't do fuel stops, but the tires should be able to go to the end, as well as a mistake into the carousel. In the background, you can see Swaby going wide. Happy for modern Grand Prix Racing's development of paved runoff there.
Yeah, you wouldn't get away with that in back in the day, back in 1968. So just see your London Swaby, just gets a little bit loose there, and then a little bit tight, and then just trying to get the car to go back. And it's if you're used to a modern modern day single seater where you just look where you want to go and it's already there before you've even thought about it. Well, these cars, you kind of have to think about it, plan it, and then execute it, and then it might decide to do what you've asked it to do.
Yeah, you talk about as we continue to watch this fight with Schmeier. Oh, he might get a good shot here. Espedy, we've seen very few drivers defend to the inside coming into the carousel, and Espedy certainly doesn't look to buck the trend. He's going to try and hold on the long way around, but I think Schmeier might have this, and indeed, a nice smooth move to get himself back into third. I was going to say, Peter, you mentioned how today they talk about looking far ahead just because of how quickly the car is going to get here. For these cars, you need to look far ahead because the car's not going to change where it's going anytime soon.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. It's funny, although you never thought I would ever mention a Lotus 49 Grand Prix car and a NASCAR in the same breath. But of course, this is close to the layout that the NASCAR drivers will use, and NASCAR is kind of the same. It's not it doesn't slow down very quickly. It's certainly got plenty of power, just like this thing, but not so much grip on the road course as well. So yeah, it's a completely different style of driving. Speaking of, Christian Challoner is driving really, really hot pace. He qualified the 106.3. But he's now knocking out 1 minute 7.0s quite comfortably. And I wonder, if running at that pace, now he'll be running with full fuel on the car, which of course he wouldn't be in qualifying. I mean, that indicates to me that he is really pushing hard, given the weight that he's got on board with all the fuel.
Absolutely, and I'm not surprised to see he's able to hold a pretty impressive pace. As a mistake from Schmeier is going to open the door. We saw a move attempted into the carousel, didn't come off for Espedy. He's to the inside as they drag race down into the 90s. Steep downhill braking zone, not easy in these cars. And it looks like he's going to be able to get it away, but Schmeier will get a shot up the backstretch.
Yeah, and Schmeier's been super fast up the backstretch. We've seen it multiple laps, but the question is he going to take that opportunity this time around? He might have some hot tires from trying to defend from Austin, but Austin once again struggling with the exit of the S's. That thing just wants to snap around on him, and here comes Jeff with a run, and he's going to back out of it early. He does not want to challenge once again into the outer loop.
Oh, he'll bide his time. He sits and waits. And interesting, you mentioned the fuel on board. One thing I also found that was a bit counterintuitive, Peter, is that when you had a lot of fuel on board, the car actually felt better. And I put that down to it is so light and there is so much suspension travel. It's not bouncing around on the bumps nearly as much. It's sort of glued to the floor a little better.
Yeah, that is very true. Yes, it's just keeps it that little bit more stable. Of course, the trade-off is that it won't be as maneuverable. That's always the kind of trade-off on setup anyway, isn't it? You want to have really kind of sort of cumbersome, stable car, or one that's really kind of on a knife edge but very maneuverable. Certainly, go on. You spotted something, Adam?
Nick Kuhn has been off in the gravel trap right before the final corner, so he's definitely had a moment going into the penultimate corner in the braking zone.
He did. He spun off on his own. We've got a replay of it. This is not quite what we saw before. Yeah, it looks like he did go deep, but this time he kind of just let it sail out instead of stabbing the brakes like we saw with before, and that unfortunately sent it out into the kitty litter. He's able to keep going since he didn't hit anything, but now he is down to 16th.
And he flies off into the grapes there. And back in the day, there would have been just hay bales and a field probably off in that direction, and maybe the grandstands. So very fortunate once again to have the modern the modern racing amenities that we have around racetracks like this nowadays, but he's back on track.
Got a battle for fifth with Wade Hayes and Liam Quinn. As Quinn is just about half a second behind. We should see him close in as they pick up speed, 120 miles an hour, 130 miles an hour. Oh, but hey, Quinn has a little bit of trouble up the hill, and instead of pulling right up behind him, he starts to fall back.
Yeah, and that's just one of the things that it just comes from lap to lap. That's one of the reasons why they, I mean, not just because of the imprecise nature of the timing, but just the nature of these cars is why they used to score them in whole seconds rather than tenths back in the day with these machines, is just because you would get these cars with the techniques would just change from lap to lap, and the guys would fluctuate from one car length to two car lengths, and so you wouldn't know how close they were behind each other, and frankly it wouldn't matter that much. What matters is how the guy's doing on that particular lap.
Still stays with it as they now come down the front stretch. I'm keeping half an eye on this and half an eye on Espedy and Schmeier, who we've left before. You see them flash across the screen. They're just in front of this fight, but they're not battling right now. As we climb up the hill, a lot of elevation change around here. And did we have, oh, Lynn Kinchlow was off.
Yeah, Lynn Kinchlow with a similar incident that we saw before, going off into the sand trap. So we're going to take a look at this one.
I think he was coming up to Wallet and didn't realize he was going to slow that quickly.
Yeah, I mean, if he would have braked any later, he would have been off into the barrier over there. So Lynn actually probably benefiting from the fact that Wallet braked a little bit earlier than Lynn was expecting.
Interesting.
Back on track. Go ahead.
Sorry, Joe. The interesting now, if we look at our time screens, it's not going to be long before Christian Challoner comes across lap traffic as he sets another fast lap of the race, and his consistency is just exceptional. He's very, very rarely more than a tenth or two apart from the previous lap, which indicates, indicates just how comfortable he is at the wheel of the car. But of course, that will change. He has to make his way through the traffic. You know, he's going to come across the guys in sort of 16th, 17th, 18th place right now, and we're only at about quarter distance in this race, so that's going to be a challenge that Christian's going to have to just take carefully, because he does have obviously plenty of pace in hand, so he does have that little bit of a luxury on the other hand, where he can afford to be that little bit more patient making his way around the lap traffic.
Yeah, Joe, I've been noticing something. Austin Espedy has been making more mistakes every lap. Jeff Schmeier's pressure is definitely starting to get to him.
Certainly seems to be the case. Coming into this corner last time through. Oh, and it's another mistake. This time he's closer, but he can't take advantage as Schmeier has to check up big time. That's twice in a row that Espedy has failed to correctly maneuver through turn 6.
Yeah, this is going to be intense. I mean, Jeff Schmeier, I love it when you can see the drivers smell blood in the water, because you can tell that they know exactly where they're going to attack. Wow, Austin Espedy extremely loose on the brakes into turn 1 on the downhill. And here we come up to another sector where Austin seems to struggle, which is the exit here of the S's. Let's see, on this right-hander, he tends to get pretty loose, and once again, he drifts out just a little bit wide. Jeff Schmeier with a great run, but Aaron Roofs is going to be on the right side. That's a lap machine. As he goes by, Jeff Schmeier's going to pull out and look to the inside corner, but Austin Espedy's going to try and carry the brakes into the outer loop and is going to manage to hold it.
Great defense from the number 77. Great heads up from Roofs in the 426 to pull out of the way just as he saw that battle coming along. Okay, Espedy gets a third try. Can he make it into the corner this time? That's looking a little bit smoother. There we go. That is the way that we've been wanting to see from the 77. Now, granted, Schmeier is still close behind. That job one is done. Now he's got six other corners that he's got to get correct and try and pull away from Schmeier, who's blinking on my screen.
And actually, right behind them, Liam Quinn and Wade Hayes very tight together. They were almost side by side there as they went through one. As we jump on board with Wade Hayes looking back, I mean, that engine just looks so gorgeous. all they're exposed to the air and everything, but Liam Quinn has been putting pressure on Wade Hayes the last couple of laps, and Wade starting to blanch a little bit. You can see how loose he's getting on the exit of the S's. He's going to actually stay to the right-hand side and try and get a better line through the outer loop. Liam Quinn's going to have to be really brave on the brakes to try and make it around the outside here. Wade Hayes holding him off well.
That outside line seems to be the desired place to be, but Wade Hayes with a good defense down on the inside for once. As they come down towards turn 6, Liam Quinn going to brake a little bit early, just giving himself space.
Oh, Wayne Hutchinson has wrecked out in the S's. He's upside down, and he's just taking a pit. This was a big, big incident. This would have been, Wade would have been in the hospital after this one.
Oh,
yeah, I think he touched the grass on the inside.
Oh, now who was that going by? That just
Adam
missed.
Halleck.
Oof.
So Adam Halleck breathing a sigh of relief. Unfortunately, there's very few small accidents in these cars with how fast they get going. I always see a lot of people as, let's head back to Wade Hayes. Oh, as he was under attack from Quinn, but Quinn had a bobble coming through the S's himself, and he falls behind a little bit. He was right up underneath him. Not sure what happened there.
Yeah, you can see. Sorry, go on, Adam.
Yeah, Liam Quinn just got a little bit loose coming through the crest. There's a little bit of a crest in the middle of the S's, and going over that crest, the car got a little bit loose and continued heading left, and so that's what caused him the issue. Looks like he's got a little bit of hot tires now as he went a little bit wide on the exit of the outer loop as well. There's going to be a couple laps to cool those things down.
We hear people talk about, oh, these cars feel slow, which I completely disagree. Right here through this corner, minimum speed was 85 miles an hour. That is not slow, especially through that corner. It's just, you look here, coming down to the first corner, he gets up to 160 from that 180, and that's with no wings on the car. If anything, Peter, I've always tried to tell people, it's not that the car is slow, it's just that the corners feel slow comparatively to what you do on the straight.
I would completely agree that they couldn't be more wrong if they tried. This is not a slow car. It's just by any yardstick you want to choose. I mean, just on pure statistics, the power to weight of these things. You can imagine what this must have been like in 1967. It must have been like a spaceship. 400 horsepower, which you think, oh, so what? An Audi RS3 has 400 horsepower. Yeah, but an Audi RS3 weighs 3 times what this thing does. It's an extraordinary piece of kit, and it must have just been game-changing at the time, and of course it was with the results. But it's here in the sim, it's the way it gets off the corner and how you have to manage the throttle all the time, because you can't just plant your foot down at it. If you could say, well, it's not as fast as an LMP1 car, we go, well, yeah, anybody can put their foot down hard out of a corner in an LMP1 car, and the four-wheel drive sorts it out. But this thing, you've got to be so delicate with the throttle, the brake, the steering, everything. It requires so much more. Frankly, it requires more skill, in my opinion.
I would agree. It is among the more difficult cars to master here on the service, despite its simplicity. As we watched this fight, so we saw a glimpse of Schmeier once again closing in on Espedy. Let's take a look at that one. It's within 0.2 of a second. Oh, and this is a good run from Schmeier as we hop onto the gearbox. Looking back from Espedy, still it seemed very few people brave enough to attempt to pass into the penultimate turn. We see Christian Challenger continuing to set fastest laps. For those who haven't been looking over at the left side of the screen, he is now up to 9 seconds ahead of Eric Smith.
And taking a look at how Jeff Schmeier is attacking Austin Espedy, he's kind of waiting for Austin to make a mistake. Back then, in this style of racing, you would not wait for Austin to make a mistake. You'd get up alongside him every opportunity you could and try and force him into braking late. Try and force him into making a move or positioning his car in a way that's going to be unadvantageous for him coming out of the corner. And that's exactly what Jeff is going to need to do to move Austin, because I've raced with Austin before. The man is a stout driver. He's not going to bend for anything.
Wade Hayes managed to finally overtake Liam Quinn. No, excuse me, it wasn't an overtake. It was a defense. Quinn was side by side. Oh, and they're going to be side by side again here on screen. Down into the outer loop. That is Quinn to the outside, carrying the momentum. Nicely done. And he is going to get by Wade Hayes.
And while we were watching that, Austin Espedy just held off another attack from Jeff Schmeier. Jeff actually went to the outside of Austin coming through this penultimate corner. So a similar looking a battle between those two as well. But the difference being Austin held the position. But Liam is now free and clear. Well, I won't say free and clear quite yet. Let's see how Wade tackles this as they go towards one.
They're starting to come upon more and more traffic. Our battle in front of them just went by Brett Trocine. And coming out of the 90, Quinn ahead of Hayes. Let's see if Hayes in the 33 tries to come back at him. You can see coming up over the crest as the car gets a little bit light, and then it swings back to the right towards the highest point on the track, but Hayes falls away from him, and he's not going to get the shot here.
Interesting to see the draft is having a small effect, but I must be honest, I expect that a little bit more from the draft. Will that? Do you think, guys, that'll come down to the setup with the gearing, etc.? Some drivers perhaps going for slightly longer gearing or shorter.
Yeah, I think some of it can be towards the gearing because you can do a lot to tweak them in this car. Some of it is just it takes a while for them to really feel the effects of it, as it has a very small imprint. It's not that aerodynamically great of a car, but it still is very thin. So if anything, I think what we're seeing is it's causing them to kind of be stuck in these battles. It's very difficult to drop someone, even though it's also tough to pass them here, Peter. Ooh, and Schmeier's going to get a shot. It looks like Espedy got held up by David Hall. Schmeier's got the run as they come towards the braking zone for the carousel. He doesn't take the chance, but the lap traffic's starting to play a role in our fights.
And I'll be honest, guys, I think that a lot of where these guys are losing out when it comes to the draft is concerned is that a lot of these guys did a ton of practice on open track, and following the gearbox of another car through something such a technical section like the S's, I mean, that's where you're going to be losing time because you don't have the same sight picture that you did in practice. And so it takes racing this track, I mean, quite frankly, for the length of a Grand Prix before you quite get used to this to going in.
Swaby managing to get by Hill, coming around the penultimate corner the long way around once again. Oh, but he's slow off the final turn. And here comes Kevin Hill back at him, potentially just covering off a little bit off the racing line. Swaby says, no. I took this one fair and square. Let's take a look at the replay of how this pass took place, though.
Let's have a look then. So coming out the
carousel
towards the carousel, heading towards the final sector, side by side. Really tricky there, but Swaby just toughs it out on the outside, and then of course that gives you the inside critically for that final corner, and you can get the boogie, get the power down, and rush off down the front straight towards the 90 once again.
We come back live. Swaby, Hill, and that is Beltrami, who is a lapped car, so he's not involved in it. Swing their way through the penultimate turn. Getting ever closer to the halfway mark. We're about just almost to the third marker for this event. I have to imagine that there's going to be some very tired drivers after this as well, Adam. I feel like those who aren't familiar with the Lotus 49 don't realize how mentally and physically taxing it is to drive in the sim.
Yeah, I really don't envy those drivers with direct drive wheels at this point, because they're really going to be exhausted after this one. This car is one of the most physical to drive. It's one of the reasons why I love it so much. It's just so much fun to drive. It's so much fun to wheel this thing around. One of my favorite places to take this car is Sebring, just for the punishment of it. It wakes you up in the morning sometimes. But man, watching these guys battle this thing around Watkins Glen and its gently sloped corners, I mean, it's just awesome to see these guys do this.
So, I say next season they should take this car to the Nürburgring. but that's just
Ooh,
me.
oh, oh.
Yeah, as Wade Hayes is going to get a good chance on Liam Quinn down into the 90. Oh, he doesn't even take a look, though. I think he's maybe setting himself up for here. Can he manage to hold on up through the S's? More traffic in front of him. David Hall, who interrupted the battle before between Espedy and Schmeier. They won't catch him in the S's, so hopefully it shouldn't be a problem in that portion of the track. Up at the top of the hill, no. Wade Hayes, who looked oh so close, just isn't there.
Yeah, and the reason why he was tucked up so close behind Liam Quinn that lap is that the previous lap, Liam Quinn outbraked himself into turn 1. So Wade was trying to pressure him to do that once again. Didn't happen, but now David Hall on the exit for Liam Quinn. Wade Hayes couldn't maintain that speed through the outer loop. I think he just lost the edge of grip that you're looking for, and he falls back a little bit. Still looking on Liam Quinn, who made the pass on him earlier, but he's definitely not going to let him go into the distance.
Credit to the drivers. We still have all 23 starters running on the track. Granted, we are down to, I believe, 14 on the lead lap, with Christian Challenger getting ready to take that P14 as Wallet is going to be overtaken. Yeah, there it is right there as the 37 makes it now only 13 cars on the lead lap. Nick Kuhn is next up the road for him, but he's actually dealing with this lap traffic quite well as he's continued to extend it over Eric Smith to now 10.3 seconds behind him.
Yeah, and Christian running that Jim Clark inspired paint job with very retro styling on that machine. They've also redone the logo to look a little bit more like it was at the time, and that's on the left and right sides of the machine. So just a great job by the Kinetic team to really try and bring us back to the 60s.
It looks beautiful there as he comes up the hill once more. 37 has had control since the drop of the green. He's only been hassled a little bit when Smith was in the slipstream, but ever since he dropped him, it has been bye-bye everybody. Espedy still holding on to third. He's been in quite a battle with Jeff Schmeier and is finally actually pulled away. Just an update there. So it looks like Espedy seems to have shaken the challenge from the number 30.
Only one slight improvement they could have made to that Jim Clark tribute paint scheme. They should have put the number 21. Well, they could have put the number 21 if they wanted to do it in the Belgian Grand Prix spec, or number 3 for the Nürburgring spec, as we see now. Is that Challenger coming in?
No, that's Adam Halleck who went around. He went around in the penultimate corner. We're going to take a look at this replay. This was, once again, under braking. He just gets a little bit loose coming through the corner and spins it around. This one, unfortunately, was on track, so a couple of drivers had to avoid him, including Christian Challenger in the final corner once he got going once again.
That would have been why it was on a slightly strange line. And, of course, this is what Christian really has to... This is a constant risk for him, and he's always got to have his wits about him. Obviously, he's lapping so comfortably and just really in the groove when he's in clean air, but this is now going to be pretty much a constant challenge for him to get his way through lap traffic almost pretty much throughout the rest of the race. And I guess in a way that's almost just gives him a little bit of a kind of a bit of that kind of carrot on a stick mentality, when he's like, okay, next lap car, get past them safely and cleanly, and then the next one and the next one, then before you know it, you win the Grand Prix just like that. Easy as pie.
Yeah, just that simple, right?
Easy as that.
Yeah, thankfully he was able to get by Halleck cleanly. That turn 6 has been Calamity Corner this race, which surprises me a little bit. I remember it being somewhat challenging in this car, but other than what we've seen with a driver overshooting the carousel and the big wreck that we had in the S's, it's been the only spot where really we've had drivers off.
I mean, to be honest, Joe, yeah, I mean, turn 7 is... turn 6 and turn 7 are like the most challenging corners on this track, in my opinion, in any machine. And so to see the guys struggling with those corners here in these Lotus 49 doesn't surprise me that much, especially considering the fact that there's paved runoff around the carousel, which is where we've seen a couple of other people have some moments. Not any big incidents, but just some moments. and that would be the other place I'd expect to see trouble. So there's paved runoff in the 2 places where I'd expect people to go off, and then there's also the S's where we've seen a couple of people have problems, and then 6 and 7.
Right now we're watching Liam Quinn on screen. The 24 leads the 33. Hayes is pulling up very, very quickly. He doesn't poke his nose out. He's going to stay in line. That's what he does coming off the carousel. As both of them struggle to get the power down, but Quinn a little bit wider off the turn than Hayes, and it shows in his momentum.
Interesting to talk about calamity corners. You see here that it's really interesting camber there, just cambered on the inside, but the car just doesn't really quite like it. But interestingly, we haven't seen as many issues at the S's as we perhaps might normally see. And Joe, of course, we've called a lot of races at the Glen here together, and every time you see 2 cars going side by side through the S's, you go, oh, here comes a crash, and most of the time there is. But I just get the feeling that the drivers have quite a kind of knowing respect for these cars, that is something they definitely will not even consider to go side by side through the S's in this car.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because my experience in the Lotus 49 community has been pretty much that the difficulty of the cars kind of causes everybody to drive almost like they did back in 1967 and 68. It's you understand that everybody, well, your lives aren't on the line here in the sim, but your race is on the line, and if you make a dumb move, then you're both probably going to be out quickly. So everybody kind of gives a little leeway, a little bit of respect to knowing that we're all having a difficult time just keeping these things on the road, let alone trying to race each other. These two racing each other quite well, and they have been all race long, as Wade Hayes gets right underneath Liam Quinn into the final turn, but then struggles off corner exit.
Yeah, Wade Hayes definitely putting pressure on Liam Quinn. Once again, Liam got past Wade Hayes, but just has not been able to run away from him. Wade's actually looking definitely a little bit better now that he's been tucked in behind Liam Quinn for a little bit. The draft definitely helping out a little bit, but Wade Hayes seems to be wearing a little bit less on his tires. I think he took your suggestion, Peter, and he's been studying up on Liam Quinn.
It's always good just to get that little bit of a thesis. You just look at the lines they're taking, and it's amazing what you can learn sometimes. You follow somebody through a corner, and then you're like, oh, that's the line. Oh, that's where you're supposed to go. Okay, I'll put that one in my notes. And it's amazing how, to be honest, the car behind always has a little bit of the easier time, especially in a long race like this. And this is where you can sort of get into, you don't have to quite brake as late. But tried it there, and it nearly ended up in tears, of course.
Yeah, Wade Hayes sent it in a little bit deep. It sounds like we've had more problems with Hall as well.
Yeah, David Hall unfortunately outbraked himself into the outer loop as well, so he's now gone back. He's lost 18th position to Bob Beltrami, who's recovering from his own incident earlier on in the race. So David Hall back down to 19th.
Sorry, Peter, I kind of butted in on your point. Go ahead.
I've forgotten what I was saying anyway. It was obviously really good. No, yes, of course, with the when you're behind another car, especially in a race of this length, it's sometimes you almost give yourself a little bit of a rest, because you can brake that little bit earlier, you can get on the power that little bit softer, because you've always got that kind of, even if it's only in your brain, you just have that little bit of a kind of maybe you could call it the mental toll from the car in front, whereas the car in front, they're looking in the mirror saying, oh, go away, leave me alone, I'm trying to run my race. So that sort of mind game and that sort of mental attitude comes into it in these long races. And people who are perhaps new to sim racing might think, well, this is just sitting at home in your sweatpants steering the wheel, but make no mistake, this is 108 laps around here is a seriously impressive mental challenge to keep your concentration and not let this car get away from you at any point. And right now our race leader, Christian Challoner, the pace that he's cracking out on a consistent basis is exceptional.
And I was actually about to talk about that. He's still putting in 106s, whereas second place Eric Smith has yet to put in a 106 in this race. Eric Smith's fastest lap is a 107.113. So as we watch Christian Challoner go around Brian McGreevy and put the 11th place machine a lap down, I mean, Christian Challoner's pace around this is unparalleled right now. And he just puts in the fastest lap of the race while we're talking about it, a 106.713.
My goodness. I'm glad you brought up, Peter, the way that it's more than just being in a chair in your house and whatnot. Because the one thing I've heard a lot of real world drivers say, in terms of the realism of sim racing, especially on things like iRacing, is the mental experience of the race is pretty much the same thing as being in the car.
Indeed, and it's funnily enough, I was at my local track here in Scotland at the Knockhill Racing Circuit. Big shout out to those guys, and I was there commentating on a motorcycle racing meeting last weekend. And it's interesting talking to guys that have been involved in club level motorsport. Of course, they do have at the local circuit, they have two big British Championship events, but really the bread and butter, if you like, is the regular club events for both cars and motorcycles. But for me, I think, club level motorsport, sim racing is a huge part of that, a major, major part of that, not in future, right now. Because you look at, guys like Christian, tell me this guy is not talented to drive this car in a piece of software as realistic as iRacing is at this speed is exceptional. But to go classic Grand Prix racing is a billionaire's hobby. So it's personally, I think it's really good. And I mean, the advancements with software and hardware over the last 5 years are just mind-blowing. But when you speak to people who are established in in motor racing, and you try to explain to them, a lot of them are incredibly surprised by the sheer professionalism. How you have teams, you have broadcasts, you have leagues all the time. It's beyond a lot of people's imagination.
And Peter, as we've been talking about this, I've been noticing that the track, the lap times are starting to go down quite a bit. And so is the track temperature. Track temperature is down to 109 degrees Fahrenheit or 43 degrees Celsius. So that track temperature is definitely starting to decrease, along with the fuel load starting to decrease. And that's starting to make things a little bit easier for all these drivers. A lot of personal bests coming in. Austin Espedy, Jeff Schmeier, Jason Wallet, William Fletcher, all setting personal best last lap. Eric Smith set his personal best 2 laps ago. So tons of drivers definitely starting to shave those crucial tenths off of their lap times.
That's video on screen in the 77. Sorry there, Peter. One thing that we should point out, it is 4 p.m. virtual standard time right now, so it's not super late in the day, but as that sun continues to go down, it should continue to cool a little bit by little bit.
Yeah, no, that's the first time that, Adam, you mentioned Eric Smith. That's the first time he's got underneath that 107 barrier, 106.9. He got down there too. But Christian Challoner, I can't remember the last time when I looked at this timing screen when he was in the 107s. He's been sitting in those 106 all the time. And I would think now that he's built that cushion of sort of 11, 12 seconds, he can now maybe go into a little bit more of a cruise mode because, the fuel's coming off, the lap speed's still good, but, it's just, well, we're not far away from halfway, but that's a long time for the tires to go. So he's probably, not making sure he's not sliding too much and just driving smooth. But, if you think about the drivers of the day, the guys that had so much success in this car, Jim Clark, he won the Mexican, the British, the Dutch, and the US Grand Prix in this car in its first season. And, Graham Hill obviously won the championship the following year. But you look at the way that they drove a car, particularly Jim Clark, and Jim Clark passed on that style to Sir Jackie Stewart. They look like they're driving down to get a pint of milk from the shops. I mean, so super smooth. But I guess that's just the type of driving style that these cars demanded.
Let's go to Wade Hayes. We got a little bit of a battle, and he's going to be overtaken by Liam Quinn. So Quinn comes into 5th. Now, that had swapped around before, apparently. We've got a replay. Let's see. I couldn't find this.
Yeah, this was in turn 1 about 3 laps ago where that happened. And this is the...
this is the one right now, I think.
Yeah, this is the one that just happened that we're looking at. Liam Quinn lost that position to Wade Hayes by outbraking himself into the 90, and so this is where Wade was able to get by. Or rather, where Liam was able to re-get by.
And looking around the outside, wow, great racing between these pair. Again, it is not easy to go side by side in these cars, and muscles around the outside to retain it. As we come back live, Quinn still leads Hayes. Oh, and did Halleck have another problem? Halleck seemed to be off course there. Looks like he slid out on his own. Not sure if we need a replay of this one heading into the carousel. Didn't hit anything. All right, lap 48 out of 108. Getting ever closer to the halfway mark, and then we have to do the same thing all over again. Hopefully the drivers aren't too tired from that. As we watch the 24 give, or at least the 33 give chase on the 24, I should say, into what has been one of the more trickier corners down there into turn 6, then into the final turn. No need to come into the pits for these two as they breeze on by yet again and complete yet another lap. We're down to 10 drivers left on the lead lap. Ryan Steele, the latest, the last car on the lead lap right now.
Yeah, Joe, just an interesting thing to note is that the gap between Christian Challoner and Eric Smith has sat about around the same as from Eric Smith down to Austin Espedy for third position. So as we're looking at Ryan Steele, who's tucked down in that 10th spot, he's currently 9 seconds behind Kevin Hill. But it's just interesting to know that Christian Challoner's pace over Eric Smith is about the same rate of pace that Eric Smith is over Austin Espedy. So it's just fascinating to see the difference in pace levels between these different drivers.
One driver that's got a little bit of a different pace level from those around him is Bob Beltrami. Remember, he had those early problems on either the first or second lap. I'm trying to remember which. But the number 14 has recently overtaken Rob Gall. It was maybe a couple laps ago at this point, and has now set his sights on William Fletcher. In fact, he's gaining multiple seconds a lap here. Great, big credit to the Salami here because he's not giving up. He's gaining positions. He knew it was a long race left to go. And well, I'm curious to see how high up he can get. There's some big gaps right now at this far back in the field, but if he gets up to Adam Halleck, there's a few cars in a row right close to each other.
I mean, his fastest lap is a 107.948, and that will only increase, whereas William Fletcher's fastest lap is a 108.4, and last lap, William Fletcher must have made a mistake because he did a 110.377, but he's been setting about 108.5s on average to Rob Gall's 108.3s. So I think that to Bob Beltrami's 108.3s. So I think Bob Beltrami, as you can see there, he is gaining. Yeah, he's gaining pretty consistently from anywhere from 0.2 to 2 seconds a lap. So I think Bob might be, well, I mean, almost definitely will be able to get him by the end of this race.
Lap 46 was the outlier in there. Everything else was over a second except for one, which was 0.9 of a second. So it might as well have been. He is definitely catching quickly, and that's got to be encouraging for him if he's watching those numbers.
Lyndon Swaby's made a big mistake on through the penultimate corner, and he's hit the inside wall very hard. He was in a battle with I believe Brian Barnes, or no, Kevin Hill. We're going to see it right here. He's got Kevin Hill chasing him. He goes into the final corner. He's loose all the way through the entire thing, clips the outside grass, and just spears into the inside wall.
Pegleg's going to have to batten down the hatches. He'll come on in and get his spare car. So the number 100 will be able to return. He should return most likely. That makes us 9 cars on the lead lap. You can see the severe damage on that machine.
That's good. He's got that instant repair, the fast repair that we have here in iRacing. Be able to just come in and just take a stop and get back up to 100% again. But it just a tiny mistake there and nearly held it, and then it just really violently snapped straight to the left. It looked like he might have been able to run through the gravel there and get it back. And I will make a confession, guys. I was just before that happened, I was going to say, do you think that those corners, that sort of left-right switch back in the last part of the lap, was going to get easier with the fuel load coming down? But perhaps not yet.
There's your answer. Yeah.
There's your answer. No.
So on screen, we're watching Wade Hayes and Liam Quinn still fighting for P5. And that is Quinn, who is leading, definitely stretching it all the way out to the limits. You could see him bounding the car nearly into the grass on the backstretch. Wade Hayes is not going to have the opportunity that he's looking for. That's Lynn Kinchlow in front of them. He's a lapped car. So is he going to give way to them pretty readily, or is he going to make life difficult for Quinn? That is probably the biggest thing Wade Hayes is looking for right here, is a potential pick.
Yeah, and he's definitely hoping that Lynn, who's not a slow driver at all in most of the sessions that we run here, he's hoping that Lynn's not going to give Liam an easy job here to get past. So Wade Hayes definitely in a great position, but look at this, Lynn Kinchlow moving over, respecting blue flags in a very F1 style. At the Major Series, they take the iRacing stance that blue flags are just advisory, but around here, the guys like to be gentlemen and let everyone go by if they're not in points championship battle or a on-track battle.
So we're getting some information on the championship battle. Challoner, as we know, is leading it by a good chunk. Now, one thing we didn't mention is that Driscoll and Warling are not here today. So apparently, according to the math, if Challoner makes it to lap 81, he clinches the championship with 2 rounds to go. That is, I'm trying to think if we've ever had that happen in the majors.
I remember it being clinched before the final round, but not before the final 2 rounds. I mean, halfway through 3 rounds to go, I mean, that would be very impressive. Christian Challoner, we have talked about it before. He made the move over to the Americas region to get more of a challenge, and trust me when I say his wins have not been uncontested. This is the biggest gap for a lead that I think he's had all season. And the fact that he's been able to persevere and get those wins regardless, and he's in a position to clinch the championship in about 30 laps time, that's really impressive.
I tell you what, guys, you know, if you got to give a shout out to Eric Smith, because he has not let off the pressure. If you look at the lap times, they're only been separated by a tenth or two each lap, which, as we know, is just tiny amount. And you know, after 54 laps, where Christian's not even being close to making a mistake, the gap is, and I say this lightly, only 14.8 seconds. But that isn't much. That is, as we've seen, one small trip into a gravel trap, and that gap's gone. And then, you know, once they're together, we know how difficult it is to drop in these cars. You know, it's Christian's in the driving seat right now, but this is where it gets into the really difficult part of the race. We're right on half distance now, so there's a long way to go, and that's where keeping that mental concentration and keeping that rhythm is where the real challenge lies to get over the line and win this race.
Yeah, we saw the lap comparison between Smith and Challoner there. I definitely feel like Eric deserves a little more. Unfortunately, he was up against the best today, and he has shown himself to be a worthy competitor. It's just this long of a race and this challenging of a car, it looks worse than it probably is. So my hat is off to the 32 for the way he's been running.
Yeah, and Joe, it's also been like it's been amazing. It was amazing to see where that gap started to form. It was on that 3rd or 4th lap where, just going into the outer loop, Christian Challoner just started to pull away, and it was almost like Eric Smith just like lost a couple of RPM off the top of the torque curve of that machine, and suddenly Christian just started disappearing into the distance. And I don't think it was because Eric Smith slowed down. I think maybe Christian picked up the pace a little bit, but it is impressive to see Eric holding Christian Challoner honest. And to point out that really odd point once again, the gap back to Austin Espedy from Eric Smith is once again within 0.3 of the exact same gap up to Christian Challoner.
Going to take a look here at the number 77. Yeah, the top 3 are pretty much equidistant apart. That might have been closer, because remember, Espedy's been battling a lot with the car behind Jeff Schmeier, who's now about a second back, so he's not as big of a threat as he's been on some previous laps. It's a lot of cases of what could have been for Austin Espedy if he wasn't struggling to try and retain the number 30. Now that he's got himself in clear air, he's been doing quite well. Speaking of clear air, Bob Beltrami, who we mentioned earlier trying to chase down Fletcher, has unfortunately been dealing with those blue flags, and his gap up to Fletcher has been yo-yoing back and forth. It was down to what it is now, 12 seconds a few laps ago, and then it went back up to 14 when he had to slow and let cars through. Poor Bob is having to deal with even what modern F1 drivers have to deal with.
Yeah, it's never a fun thing to be dealing with blue flags because you always feel like you're losing out to the drivers ahead. But you have to remember that they're also dealing with blue flags, so it's not something, it's not a completely unfair event that happens to you, especially as you're going forward. Christian Challenger setting yet again the fastest lap of the race, a 106.462. I mean, Peter, he's getting close to his pole time at this point.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Oh, we got a problem. Oh, that's Espety. Espety is crabbing sideways at a 45-degree angle.
It was lap traffic, I think.
Yes, it was.
Oh, no. So there you go. That's just what can happen in the blink of an eye. Didn't do anything wrong. Whack. Straight in the wall. That just a tiny, of course, with these open wheel cars, just the tiniest of contact can make all of the difference. And he's just got to try. Thankfully, it happened relatively near the end of the circuit, so he's doing a great job to limp this Lotus 49 back into the pits where he can get his fast repair and get back going again. But for Espety, that's a disaster.
Well, for Schmeier, it is his boon. He's now up to third with nobody around him. Liam Quinn is 12 seconds back and honestly still worried about what's behind because he's still in something of a fight with Wade Hayes, the number 33. So that now gets promoted to P4 instead of P5 between those two. Espedy did make it into the pits. That was Brett Trocine that he made contact with. I don't know if I really put that one on Brett. He did juke a little bit to the right, but I think they still would have made contact even without that.
Yeah, I think that was a racing incident between the two of them. I think that Austin was carrying so much speed out of the corner, he really couldn't avoid hitting Brett, and Brett was trying to catch a little bit of looseness coming off of the outer loop, so the two of them just coming together as they're both dealing with the nature of these cars.
Could we get a replay on Lynn Kinchlow? Had a big save recently. That lost him a spot to William Fletcher. This is actually a magnificent save. It's through the S's. Let's see if we can pull up the replay here. Normally, not a place where you can lose control of the car. Here, this is just after it. Not a place where you can lose control of the car and then... Yeah, look at that. Completely perpendicular. And somehow he stops it and gets it back going once again without a scratch.
Well, just gets on the curb there. Just one wheel on the curb and... Oh, Ken Block, eat your heart out. That is incredible. That's almost Francois Delacour-esque. That's very impressive indeed for Lynn Kitchelow.
And he just had a crash anyways, just now, with a
no.
back marker. And no, it wasn't a back marker. It was William Fletcher. He was coming up to the back of Fletcher, and there you see the damage on the replay.
Yeah, here they come into the braking zone for one, and he just outbrakes himself. He would have missed the corner, Joe. That was way deep into the corner.
That's the second time we've seen someone run into the back of somebody down into the first turn, and unfortunately have dire results. So the 44 now gets sent to pit lane. That is such a shame after we were just praising that great save. As we come back live in the S's yet again, here's Wade Hayes trying to chase down Liam Quinn.
Yeah, this is very tight. Liam Quinn very loose through the exit of the S's, but he just keeps his foot down and powers out of it. I mean, the bravery of these guys. I love seeing it. This is exactly why people were such fans of F1 at the time. Just the risk and the daringness of these drivers to just keep their foot down even when it looks like they're about to lose it. It's very impressive and awesome to watch.
Their lives really were on the line back then. It was not uncommon for drivers to pay the ultimate price for a mistake in racing or other people's mistakes. So You really had to be of a certain type to be willing to go and do that at the highest level in that day.
Yeah, you really did, didn't you? It's one slightly funny story or cautiously funny story was um, one day it was in the early '60s. It was Colin Chapman's birthday. Of course, Colin Chapman, the design genius who was the kind of front man of Lotus and designed this very car. But Sterling Moss used to drive for him, and when it was Colin Chapman's birthday, and Colin Chapman was known for maybe not having the best sense of humour. And Sterling Moss had been in a number of accidents in Lotuses where the wheel had come off. So he decided to, when it was Colin's birthday, make him a cake with a model Lotus on it with two of the wheels missing. And Colin Chapman did not appreciate the joke.
I thought you were going to say he gave him an extra attachment or bolt or something to put on the car for his birthday.
Yeah, now, if I may, just coming back to just before that incident, we talked about Christian Challoner putting in the fastest lap of the race after 55 laps is impressive enough. But when you consider that he's pretty much on his qualifying pace, give or take a tenth, after 54 laps of running, is absolutely exceptional, because those tyres can't be in qualifying condition. They can't be after that amount of time.
They are pretty hardy if you take good care of them. That was a skill I was never very good at, unfortunately.
Built to last, Firestone.
Yeah. I think, were they Goodyears or Firestones for at this point? I'm trying to think.
Ooh, good
Well, that's
question.
something we'll have to look up. We're hearing Firestones from the peanut gallery, so we'll try and check to see if we can confirm that. The thing that gets me about Christian is the mental acuity. Like I said, it's not only physically taxing, it is mentally taxing to drive these cars. You just are wiped in every sense of the word. And he just looks like he's on a Sunday stroll here.
Yeah, he's driving in true Jim Clark fashion, that's for sure. We just look at his steering inputs, just so gentle and just letting the car do its work, letting it do its thing, and they are just perfect balance with one another. And it's we know as race fans we love big, bish bash bosh battles at the front where they're knocking wheels and stuff like that. But sometimes it is just and again, this is where one advantage we have in sim racing as well, because if you see Lewis Hamilton or Sebastian Vettel or Charles Leclerc or whoever you like clearing off at the front of a Grand Prix, you can't really relate to it. You don't really understand what that means. But the great thing here about iRacing is that you could go and dive in this car and this track with this track temperature and have a go, and you can just see just how impressive Christian's lap times are right now, just the lap time alone, and try and do 50 laps in a row. And if you can do 50 laps without crashing, I'll send you £10 in the post. And not anything, because that's I think you get the great thing about watching sim racing and taking part in it is that you can understand much more the skill of the drivers when they're dominating like Christian is right now.
Yeah, everybody can pick up a football or a baseball and try and take part. Not everybody can hop in a car and try and wheel it around. Also, we are not responsible for your loss of money, Peter. I'm just saying right now. So
I'm Scottish. I don't volunteer that kind of money very often. That's how confident I am.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I need to get back in the car then and try it. Meanwhile, 11th is looking pretty interesting at this point, because Nick Kuhn is being caught by both Jason Wallet and Adam Halleck. Now, Halleck should be slightly out of position, because remember, we've seen a couple mistakes from him so far this race. So I wonder if he'll have a little bit of fun here in the near future as he continues to run them down. We head towards turn one. Also, thank you, Adam. Adam has confirmed in the background that it was indeed Firestone as he looked up the information for us.
Yeah,
you doubted me, Joe.
Firestone for these machines. A couple of other of the cars at the time were running Goodyears, but yeah, this is a very interesting battle as Halleck is closing up to the back of Wallet and Kuhn. Jason's been trying to chase down Nick for quite a while. He'll get within a couple of seconds, and he'll get within a couple of tenths and then fall back due to a mistake. And so I think Halleck, like you said, is a little bit out of position. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly he disposes of Wallet as he gets a little bit loose entering the outer loop and is able to recover. But that's the kind of thing that's keeping these guys separated right now.
If he can just be smooth, if he can keep it under control, which, like we said, it's so impressive what Challoner is doing up there at the front. And I think we're seeing that displayed towards the back where we are getting more mistakes out of drivers. It's still very tight here between Halleck, Wallet, and Kuhn, plunging downhill into turn one more time, but nobody with an opportunity. Here comes lap traffic. McGreevy. Oh no, that's actually for position. Oh, and a mistake from Wallet is going to give a chance for Halleck. He's going to give it up as he lifts on the way into the S's.
Yeah, the too wide through there is not so nice. So yeah, just quite a lot of respect being shown between the drivers, which is great to see, and they'll live to fight another day. Now, I do have a good story about Goodyear, if you like. It's Jackie Stewart used to drive on Goodyear tires, and actually, Jackie Stewart is obviously really one of the best commercial Formula One drivers, and really kicked off that kind of aspect of the sport properly for drivers. And one thing he did, which was quite a good trick, was in every public speech he did, which was very often, he would always slip in Goodyear into one of his speeches, but not saying, oh, I only drive Goodyear tires. He would go, well, hasn't it been a good year? Or, oh, we've had a good year. And he would sort of drop these in until his speeches. How good is that?
Oh, and what's this down the front stretch? Is that Halleck getting another?
Yes, it is.
That was Nick Kuhn being overtaken, but Kuhn gets a bit of the over-under and better momentum heading back up the hill. Let's see it. Oh, no, but he takes a little bit of the curb to the inside, and that's going to slow him down.
And right behind them, Wade Hayes just made a pass on Liam Quinn into turn one, and now they're going to be challenging each other up through the S's.
Just as this
was
battle,
tucked in.
Yeah, both of them are kicking off as we switched over now to Quinn trying to get back on Wade Hayes. He's got the slipstream. He's going to look to the inside, but he's going to back out of it before they get to the braking zone. Hayes will retain fourth.
I mean, it's crazy. All these battles happening at once as Hayes retains that fourth position. Jason Walt was challenging Nick Kuhn for that 12th position, and he had to fall back behind him as well. So all these battles breaking out at the same time. Looks like something has turned over with these tires. Maybe they're starting to hit a different stage in their life.
Also, as that was happening, Espedy on his climb back through the field went by Ryan Steele for P8. Barnes a little bit ahead of them is the last car on the lead lap, and he is in sixth position.
I mean, the pace from Christian Challoner is absolutely devastating. To lap so many guys, I mean, that's amazing. Brian Barnes here looks like he's currently sitting in that sixth position. And Christian Challoner is currently about 8 seconds behind him. He's going to lap Lynn Kinchlow one more time before that. Remember, Lynn was the one who we were talking about, who had the good save, but then the wreck into turn one. So, yeah, I mean, Christian Challoner's pace continuing to be impressive, and he's now very comfortably continuing to set times in the 106.5 range.
Halleck has disposed of Wallet, disposed of Kuhn. And he's already got his eyes forward to McGreevy, who I mentioned was also for position and not too far ahead. Half a second now between himself and the number 68.
Yeah, very close. Halleck has been improving his pace on this lesser fuel. It's entirely possible that he did most of his practice without a full fuel tank, and that was what was causing him problems, considering most of them were outbraking himself. So now that the fuel's starting to lighten up, we're seeing some really strong pace out of Halleck. Unfortunately, he is a lap down, so he's not going to be challenging for the lead anytime soon. But I could see him, at this point, he's going to be past Brian McGreevy shortly if he continues on, but then he's got 23 seconds up to Ryan Steele.
I'm watching this on one screen, and on the other, I've got Liam Quinn still chasing Wade Hayes. And I think Quinn's going to make a move. He's got to run. Oh, no, he lifted. He lifted very early.
Well, Halleck just went around again, and it was on screen. Unbelievable. Halleck unfortunately got really close up to the back of McGreevy, and I think that was a little bit too close. He had to put on the brakes a little bit too much and send him around. We're going to see it again.
Only so many mistakes he was able to get away with. Well, he didn't touch it. Oh, he barely touched it. He's good. He's still good. Oh,
Oh,
until he
oh,
did that.
I think he got checked up a little bit there, just coming around the outer loop, and I think that just unsettled his rhythm, and the car didn't want to react in time.
Battle for P4, still very hot. Quinn, who I was watching as that wreck happened, was almost on top of him. I almost think that Quinn is just kind of sitting around and waiting here.
I don't know, Joe. He's really pushing hard. I mean, these guys have been racing tooth and nail for over an hour now. I mean, I cannot imagine how sweaty these guys are right now on these machines.
Here he
comes
goes.
Liam Quinn. He's going to take a shot.
This time for sure he wants it. He tries to go side by side down into the carousel. Defending around the long way, Wade Hayes discovers there's just not enough grip, and he falls back, quickly slots into line. Thought maybe he was going to try and get him back here into the next corner, but it doesn't look to be the case.
I love how expressive these cars as well is. You know, normally in a racing car, you've got to look really, really closely to see the attitude of the driver. And this is almost like watching a motorcycle race, because the cars are so expressive with the big suspension travel that you can really tell when a driver's really pushing or really wanting to get by, and the way they kind of jink about on the straight. You can really, I just love it how much you can tell what the driver's thinking and what the driver's doing just by the behavior of the car and the style of the driving.
There's something so fun and enjoyable watching in these machines, that is for sure. Oh, and that was a big slip up there from Quinn coming up and over the S's. So Hayes has an easy run to get it right back the very next lap. Got to be frustrating for Quinn for sure. So Brian oh no, we got a big wreck behind McGreevy. That's Kuhn and Wallet. They come together. There is Wallet trying to get the car going in the 114. Big damage on it. And Nick Kuhn likewise. Both of them probably going to have to come into the pits. I had just come over here thinking that we had a battle happening, and I think this is Wallet outbreaking himself.
Yeah, I think so. Wall just gets into the back of Kuhn, and unfortunately it's going to send Kuhn into the pits. This is a really, oh my goodness, it's just a brutal accident.
I said there's no small wrecks in these cars.
You need a big wallet to repair that damage.
I actually bobbed my head down and hit my glasses on the microphone from that one. So
I'm sorry. I do apologize.
Both of them now into pits, and one of them popped back in, so it looks like they took their free repair. We've got the cameras now on our leader. It is up to 21 seconds ahead of Eric Smith. 24 back from Smith to Schmeier. Still got those 6 cars on the lead lap. Barnes is... he's got quite a ways back to Challenger at this point, so it'll be a few laps before he gets up to him.
Yeah, and actually Jeff Schmeier has been closing the gap to Eric Smith a little bit. I don't think he's in a position to possibly contend, but he has gained about 2 seconds-ish. Well, not 2 seconds. I'm going to say that he's gained a couple of seconds on the pace that he was following around when he was tucked in behind, oh my goodness, who was in third before? Austin Espedy, yes. As Christian Challenger sets yet again another fastest lap of 106.39. His pace continuing to be amazing.
What was his qualifying again?
I have to go back and look.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find it here.
103 for Christian.
His was, it's not giving it to me. Oh, that's because it was a different session. That's why.
3 points. I think it was 106.321, I think, was his qualifying. But yeah, he's right on top of qualifying pace right now. That is incredible after this length of time behind the wheel.
Back to P4. Quinn and Hayes, who have basically been glued together the entire race, just cannot get away from one another. Not sure if they're enjoying this or if they're getting frustrated out there. Hayes, who currently holds the upper hand with the 4th position, ahead of the bright blue kinetic machine of Liam Quinn. This seems sort of closer to Liam Quinn's wheelhouse, as he's known for being fast in the open wheel cars, the Indy cars specifically, but that's a high downforce car, very different driving style to this Lotus 49. Ooh, this is looking good. This is looking very good as he slides it up and over the hill one more time. Looks down to the inside. No defense from Wade Hayes as they both get on the binders down into the banked carousel corner. The inside goes to Liam Quinn. Last time this happened, Hayes had to give it up, and it's a repeat of that as he falls right back in behind.
I mean, are these guys just going to do this for the next, for the remaining hour of this race? They've been doing this for so long. They continue to battle side by side. I mean, they've got to have a mix of loving it and hating it at the same time.
And as that happened, I think Espedy recently overtook Ryan Steele. Austin's back up to P8. That is, let's take a look at that replay real quick while we've got a shot, because, I mean, credit to Austin. That was an unfortunate wreck that he had. Did this happen down into the turn, the 90? Yes, it did. Wow.
Broke him. Holy smokes.
Ooh.
By some margin.
That's a big move. That is a big move.
That's a statement, is what it is.
You can maybe pull that off in a GT car, but to do that in one of these things is really impressive indeed. It's funny the comment you're making, Joe, about having the experience in the high downforce Indy car. You can imagine one of these things. I hope he's not reaching for the weight jacker. Weight jacker would be quite handy in one of these things, wouldn't it?
Certainly would be. They do have brake bias in there that you can tweak. So
do they really? Wow.
I'm pretty certain that they do.
It was a handle, I believe.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm curious if any drivers are fiddling with that throughout the race. As is that Swaby making a move? No, that's on lap traffic. This is Hayes we're still looking at, excuse me, as he's right on top of Quinn. Didn't get the exit that he wanted, but he'll get another shot with the slipstream. There's some lap traffic in front of them. In fact, it's 4 cars. It's Hall, McGreevy, Swaby, and Gall. If they're catching them quickly, this might be bad news.
Yeah, Wade Hayes just had a really bad S's. He clipped the inside curb on the first left-hander, and that sent him towards the outside wall. He had to back off a little bit, so this is going to mean he's not going to have an opportunity to challenge here. But Liam Quinn outbraking himself is going to give him an opportunity. He's going to look up to the inside. Liam's going to try and stick it hard on the outside. He comes in just a little bit. Wade Hayes backs out. He doesn't want to make wheel-to-wheel contact, and that leaves Liam Quinn in the lead of this P4.
I've lost count of how many times these guys have done that, swapping places back and forward, going around the outer loop, where it's a part of the circuit where you've really got to have respect between both drivers, because if you just close the line at all, you'll both be off, and barely losing any time either.
Can we get a lap comparison between Hayes and Barnes? It just occurred to me that Brian Barnes is relatively close to these two. And if they keep battling, we could have a 3-way fight.
Yeah, this will be interesting to see. He's got Adam Halleck between him and Wade Hayes and Liam Quinn. We know Halleck's quick. He's just been making some mistakes. He's got Christian Challenger 0.5 behind him, but here's a lap comparison. And yeah, he's gaining.
He's catching.
Yeah, almost 2.5 tenths a lap.
Wow. Okay, so Barnes is loving this. Now, are they paying attention to that? They've been so caught up in each other, I'm not sure that they're aware.
Well, they'll know about it soon, I would imagine. And look, here comes Christian Challenger. So for Barnes, he might just be able to let Christian by at the right point. Can he? No, but Christian will tuck in behind him. He's not in too much of a hurry right now. But yeah, for Barnes, if he can have a couple of laps getting a tow from Christian, he'll be right there on that battle.
Well, and now would be the best time right here down the front stretch. I say let him by and let him pull you down the back straightaway. Lap traffic now very much a problem for both Hayes and Quinn, who nearly came together into the first corner. We didn't see it on screen, but it is proving a real headache for this battle for fourth.
It's just gorgeous seeing these cars go up through the S's here. But Wade Hayes, he took a very shallow entry into the second S's to try and get a good exit onto the back straight. Didn't really work out for him. Liam Quinn's got the draft of David Hall up ahead of him. Christian Challenger 1.8 back of these guys. That will be lapping fourth and fifth. That will leave only 3 people on the lead lap once this once Christian Challenger makes his way by, but they've got other problems to deal with, like David Hall, a lapped car that they're going to have to get past. David's going to let Liam Quinn by, and he's also going to back off and let Wade Hayes by. Wade's able to move over into the braking line and get a good setup for turn 6 and 7.
This is very busy as well for Christian Challenger. He'll be wanting to get through this gaggle pretty clean and safe and just pick his way through, because once he's got through them, then he can relax a little bit more. So he's right in the middle of this melee right now, and he's just doing a great job of just picking his way through gently, but it just takes one tiny incident in front, and I suspect he'll be sort of almost on edge, if you like, right now, just keeping an eye out to what's going on ahead, just in case he needs to react to any particular incident. But he's not rushing this, and nor does he need to. He's got 27 seconds in hand and less than 30 laps to go.
It looks like he's going to be able to get by Hall. Hall's going to lift, and Barnes is indeed riding along with him now. So this is definitely giving some help to the number 4.
Yeah, and Christian Challenger now tucked in about a second behind Wade Hayes. That's the next car. He's got a lap. Brian McGreevy is the one that Liam Quinn's trying to get by up ahead there in turn 6 and 7. So all these battles that we've been watching are starting to come together here. That's Liam Quinn trying to get past McGreevy, who did not let him by into 6 and 7. Remember that these blue flags are only advisory in the major series, so Brian McGreevy is not obligated to let these guys by, but he finally lets them by, and Wade Hayes is caught out, unfortunately, because of that. He gets a bad line into the corner. Liam Quinn able to snake away to 0.8 of a second.
This distance that Quinn has pulled on Hayes is, honestly, I would say a good thing for Challenger. The last thing he wants to see is a battle for a top position that he's got to try and pick his way through. He wants them to be separated, because if they're focused on each other, they're not worried about him being in the mix.
Yeah, so now Wade Hayes is quite a bit behind Liam Quinn, so Wade is definitely going to know that Christian's coming up. So this might be an opportunity for Christian to get by, like you said, before they start battling. Liam Quinn, though, is all focused forward. He's trying to get past Lyndon Swaby for that 10th, who is in 10th, and he's able to do so. Wade Hayes is going to let Lyndon Swaby is going to let everybody go by, actually, as they go into turn 6.
Very slow through. And that's going to be a nice job done to make sure it doesn't get all the more complicated. Quinn about 0.8 ahead of Wade Hayes. Brian Barnes, who has dropped off of Challenger slightly, is still gaining ground. He's got it down to 1.6 seconds behind Wade Hayes. If he can keep the pace up that he was running before, it's certainly not over.
Definitely not. Brian Barnes, you look at just that little smidge slower than Hayes that last time around, but Hayes is just about to get, Hayes and Quinn will just get disrupted now by Christian Challenger coming through, and that's bound to just throw the rhythm off a little bit, and it might be that they might have to just yield ever so slightly. But interestingly, I think that was Quinn there, going in Hayes, my apologies, just going almost a little bit defensive, almost blocking the route slightly for Challenger, and I don't think he will appreciate that much, but then he moves over straight away and allows him through.
But doesn't allow him to the braking line, so unfortunately Christian Challenger's going to have to take a shallow entry, which these cars do not appreciate whatsoever. You can see Christian just being a little bit more aggressive with the wheel there. Liam Quinn is now the next person that Christian's going to be lapping. That will leave only 3 cars left on the lead lap: Jeff Schmeier, Eric Smith, and Christian Challenger.
Yeah, you talked about the cars wanting as wide a line as possible. They were not made with cornering necessarily in mind in the same way as today. We haven't pointed out yet, even though we briefly mentioned the wings added to this car. This was the last generation, basically, of wingless F1 cars. And then suddenly they discovered there's more time to be found in the corners. And as such, they're just a completely different thing to drive from basically then on, and much of racing, where aerodynamics suddenly decided it's better to be glued to the ground and give up that top end speed. And the philosophy shifted. Now we have lapped everybody except for 2nd and 3rd place.
Wow. And it's funny, you think tenure, the progress of Formula One, I mean, I don't think there's really any other sport or any other medium in history that accelerates faster than Formula One. You think 10 years after this car came out, we had the Lotus 79 in 1978 with, side skirts, basically finding that the car could be sucked to the ground by ground effect, and then, here we are, and the rate of progress is just absolutely incredible in Formula One and continues to be.
And since we have passed lap 81, Christian Challoner is now our America's Region Mario Andretti Drivers Champion. By our math, this is unofficial. He has taken the Drivers' Championship. This, I think, is going to be the first time we've had a driver be a champion in multiple regions in the majors.
It's going to be awesome to see that definitely play out. Christian Challoner, a very, very amazing drive this year, not uncontested. He definitely had to fight really hard for it, but a fantastic championship, and he's still got 2 rounds to go, of 2 rounds of fun, cross-generational, cross-car action to go before he gets to stand up on that podium at the end of the year.
Watching Barnes right now. This is for 5th place. Wade Hayes has gone from attack to defense. This is going to get all the more interesting now. I love this shot here, Peter, because you were talking about seeing the suspension travel. You really can see it from this angle.
It looks so fragile, doesn't it? It's incredible. You're in this kind of torpedo with 4 wheels just sort of glued to the side of it. It just seems so basic compared to what we're used to now, but even so, you look at it now, modern day Formula One cars, those obviously those beams and those suspension arms are obviously they don't have the same travel as they do today, as they did then, but made from carbon fiber. But it just shows you the rate of progress is as well. But I have to say, I do miss steering wheels with no buttons on them. I hate buttons on steering wheels.
Last time I ran Le Mans with a team with a bunch of friends, I ran out of buttons to assign on my wheel because there's so many different things that I needed to do. So I'm kind of with you. I like the simplicity, the cars that you get in and you drive. So up the hill they go. Barnes still giving chase. He's down to within 0.7 of a second now. But Hayes is responding to Liam Quinn. It was a little over a second. Now it is down to 0.8. So he's not willing to let him romp away quite yet.
If we talk about, while we're on the topic of steering wheels, my favourite steering wheel was actually, and I used to have a Skoda Fabia VRS turbo diesel, good clean diesel fun as it was known at the time, and well, actually even before that, and it had no buttons on it, and it just fitted in the hands perfectly. Nothing better than a good steering wheel. And funnily enough, when in the brief time that I owned a Lotus, the car, no power steering, no buttons on the steering wheel, that is how it should be, I think.
We've got a car that is limping home. That's Dick Mueller. He lost it in the carousel and smashed into the wall. I suspect his day may be done because I think we saw him very early in the day hit the wall as well. It's sad to see he's so close to the finish. I feel like just getting to the checkered flag in today's race is going to be an accomplishment for a lot of drivers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that car is unfortunately very done. He's trying to crab it home, but he's going to have to be really careful crossing the track here. He does it on exit. This might catch. Oh my goodness, that was Nick Kuhn. Nick Kuhn spun around right in front of him. That's unfortunate for Nick because he was battling to try and stay ahead of Bob Beltrami, who's only a couple seconds behind him now. Nick Kuhn has now recovered and is going to go by, but that was a sketchy moment.
Is Mueller already had one? Sorry, Joe.
I was going to say, Beltrami's actually still about 2 seconds behind, so Kuhn was able to skitter away. The question is, does he have the pace to keep ahead of him? Go ahead, Peter.
Sorry, has Mueller already used one fast repair? It's a long time ago since the start of the race. Did he take a fast repair early?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. You see, just amongst all that melee, Christian Challoner setting his fastest lap of 106.389.
We had a pass between Halleck and McGreevy. Adams going to get himself into P11. with a nice move into turn 1. There you can see the number 36 is ahead of him. He's, boy, had all sorts of adventures, and he's going to try and break the draft just because he doesn't want to try and pull along McGreevy any more than he has to.
Now, here's the interesting bit is that McGreevy, Halleck, and Halleck were right in behind Lyndon Swaby when Christian Challoner was lapping Liam Quinn and Wade Hayes. But because of Liam Quinn and Wade Hayes going through, those gaps have opened up quite a bit, and that gave Halleck the opportunity to tuck in behind McGreevy. And now Swaby is up the road by about 3.5 seconds. So that just goes to show you how being the lap traffic can cause you to lose sight of the cars ahead of you and lose an opportunity at a position.
Ooh, did Barnes finally get up to Hayes? Yes, he did. Here he is in the number 4. He's going to have the slipstream. This is going to have to be a big run. Oh, and it is a big run. He's got a great shot at it. Looks like Hayes is going to cover the inside. Barnes is going to be fully alongside him by the time they hit the brakes. Can he hold it around the outside? He's going to try it as the two cars swing it through the carousel. And he carries the speed well, comes right back at him when Hayes isn't expecting it. It's going to give him the inside as they run down into turn 6. Both of them trying their best to play chicken into this corner, but it looks like the bravery goes to Barnes.
Wow.
Great move there from Barnes. He set that up so early. He braked early into the outer loop, went round the outside there, knowing that would give him the inside on the next corner as Christian Challoner puts in another fastest lap of the race, 106.361, just a 10th off his qualifying pace on tyres that have done 89 laps. That is alien territory.
Just unreal. And interesting to note that position for 5th place would have been for 2 points for Barnes now and 1 point for Hayes if they went by the rules back when this race actually ran. So all these cars behind them as Hayes goes way wide coming into the carousel. All these cars behind them that are working so hard and putting so much into this race would come away with really nothing except for essentially the pride to know that they saw the checkered flag.
A different time when you talk about points, records, and even race wins. You know, Jim Clark, he took his 25th and final win in this car in his only World Championship race in the South African Grand Prix of 1968. Was on pole by over a second and went on to dominate the race. But yeah, it's you know, that was his 25th win, just one more than Juan Manuel Fangio.
Sorry, Quinn just went off. Quinn went off at the first corner. He's now side by side with Barnes. He had a shot at it, but he couldn't quite get through. A big mistake from the number 24 has brought all three of them together once again, because here's Wade Hayes, the third in line, poking his nose out, then coming back in. Brian Barnes is gutsy because he sees a little bit of a traffic that could help him, but the door is shut by Liam Quinn down into the carousel.
Unbelievable stuff from these three drivers as they keep going once again. That was Brett Trocine, who's already been involved in one incident. That was with Austin Espedy earlier on. He didn't want to be involved in yet another one, and Liam Quinn just sending it deep into the corner, shutting the door. But look at these drivers. You can see, based upon the attitude of the cars, which you were talking about earlier, Peter, that they're definitely on edge and fighting now. They see that 4th place, and they're hungry for it.
Barnes is on a charge, isn't he? He's just cutting through it. So he's just come alive in these last few laps. Quinn getting very, very late on the brakes there into the 90, but Barnes right in the aerodynamic slipstream. He's got a 49 hole being punched in front of him, but let's see if he can make the advantage of it. We know he knows how to set up that move, going in the outside along the outer loop and then getting the inside for the next corner. I think he just ran onto the grass there slightly, might have just compromised his run. Let's see, he closes in a bit on the brakes, but maybe gonna just wait to, oh no, here he goes. Look at this, is he gonna go around the outside? No, doesn't quite have the edge there, but maybe a dress rehearsal, guys.
He is on the edge because he clipped the curb coming into the S's, and then you're right, he was just barely off into the grass and somehow kept the car with it. It's so easy to spin it by sending it into the green stuff. And this is Bob Beltrami, who's dutifully pulling out of the way. He doesn't want to try and be a part of this fight.
Sorry, Joe, I have to break in the middle. Christian Challoner just set a 106.121. That is a tenth faster than his qualifying time.
It is a much cooler track than what we saw in qualifying, for what it's worth. It's 100 Fahrenheit right now. So a little bit better conditions, but yeah, it's on tires that have done nearly 100 laps.
Shows you how much of a difference the fuel makes. You know, obviously, starting off with starting 92 laps, they've burned off 92 laps worth of fuel, and these cars will have to start with a lot of fuel. Just shows you. You look at just how small the car is, and of course how much is taken up by the driver and the engine. It just shows you the compromises they had to take with where the fuel tank went. I mean, it just shows you how dangerous these cars actually were.
In that time, it wasn't uncommon for the fuel tank to literally wrap around the cockpit, which is why they were sometimes referred to jokingly as time bombs.
A different era altogether. But I don't know about you guys. I definitely am a subscriber to the view that every era has its challenges, has its upsides, has its downsides. But when you look back, you can't help but admire what these guys did at the time. And I'm sure 50 years from now, people will admire what the current Grand Prix drivers, your Verstappens, your Hamiltons, your Leclerc, those kind of guys. I'm sure will look back on those sort of races and think, oh, isn't classic F1 great?
Well, I hear people fondly talk about the early 2000s sometimes, which makes me kind of do a double take. In terms of having gone through that era of Formula One, but this battle is certainly giving us a classic right now for the majors, and they're coming up on Nick Kuhn now, getting ready to try and lap him. Liam Quinn, if he hadn't made that mistake, he probably would have been a lot safer here from Barnes, who was gaining, but not that quickly. And Barnes now, considering he started this race in 11th, is close to potentially a podium if something happens to any of the top three. If he gets by Quinn, which looks like he could do that because he's got another good run here. They also lost poor Wade Hayes, who got caught up in traffic there through the 90. If anything happens to the top three, if Barnes gets by Quinn here, he is set to step onto the podium.
Yeah, Barnes really on the tear. He's been the danger man the last 10 laps or so. But I tell you what, Quinn is not going to let him have it easy. He's seen Barnes coming, and he's maybe seen the odd move in the mirror and thinking, I need to be careful. And you just see there, he just covers that outside line and then stays to the inside there, does Quinn, making sure that Barnes can't get that run on him. So the further Barnes makes it up, the sterner the opponents get. And oh my word, that just took my breath. Quinn there putting his whole rear Firestone left tyre on the grass as Christian Challoner does a 106.0. Oh, I tell you what, should we get a campaign going for a 105? How cool would that be?
Be amazing. This battle rages on. Not as good of an exit this time for Brian Barnes. We've nicknamed him the Popsicle Man for the sponsor that he's put on his car for a lot of years. And this is one of the more impressive runs we've seen from him on the road courses. Typically, he's strong on the oval side. Maybe that experience in stock cars did indeed help him here today. We talked about that a little bit earlier. By the way, Espedy moved up past Hill recently. He is now back to 7th, but he's 32 seconds behind what is sort of this battle, Wade Hayes, who's now a little ways back. So I think that's where the progress stops for the number 77.
Yeah, Joe, I want to take us up to Christian Challoner for a moment because he's about to let Jeff Schmeier, our third place runner in this race. Christian Challoner lapping Jeff Schmeier to make it only 2 cars left on the lead lap. Now, he's not going to catch up to Eric Smith, who's still doing 106s, but Christian Challoner's last lap was a 106.060 versus Eric Smith's 106.825. I mean, Christian is absolutely flying out there.
This really does feel like an old school Formula One race where, only a few cars left on the lead lap. And about the only difference is we would probably have maybe 6 cars running at the end. comparatively. Oh, Quinn made a mistake. Quinn has made a mistake, and it looks like that Barnes is going to easily get by. I was looking away. I'm not sure how this happened, but it seemed to have been in the S's. It's still close between them, so Quinn could fight back, and he's going to try to, but now he has to give way.
Yeah, Quinn over-rotated through the center of the S's. Let's stay with this, though, because, all right, we're going to head over and take a look at this replay because this is Liam Quinn going through the S's, and he actually over-rotates on the crest of the hill right here, and that's going to be the...
Stay with the replay here because we got action. Yeah, oh, wow, great catch. Wow, he had about a foot to go before he was painting those sidewalls blue. Stay with it here because it continues on all the way into the penultimate corner, and Brian Barnes almost loses it himself. Here you can see him fighting back. Watch him get a great run coming off the turn down into the penultimate corner here. Barnes hoping to try and hold him off, but it's just not to be. And then watch with Barnes here. Watch that number 4 car into the penultimate turn. Suddenly doesn't like how it's handling. Oh,
both of those, if you're looking at this going, oh, those 2 moments didn't look that bad, that they would have been absolutely massive on board to hang on to those, because this car is so busy. But when you get it visibly looking from the outside and it looks pretty big, it's going to be enormous on board. But Quinn just recovering. I tell you what, he really gets the wheel touching in, and there's your number 5. Wow, sound like Claxton.
Unbelievable.
Just unreal. His ability, as Barnes is using all of his ability. He had a run down into the 90. Doesn't poke his nose in. Quinn ahead of him, looking to retain that 4th place. Wade Hayes has regained a little bit of time from their fighting back and forth. He's got it back down to 1.4 seconds. Can Quinn keep the car underneath him? Are his tires starting to go away after so much abuse? This one looks better, and Barnes does not have a response.
I mean, Quinn is absolutely on the edge. He was so squirrely coming out of the S's. Even though Barnes has the draft, he's actually going to brake a little bit early because I think he's going to try and cool his tires down. We're closing in on 11 to go this next time by, close to 10 to go. I think Brian Barnes realizes that even if he gets by Quinn, he might not be able to hold him off entirely. And believe it or not, these guys are gaining on Jeff Schmeier. They continue to close the gap just a little bit each time. And if Jeff continues to fall in pace like this just a little bit, they might catch him. Oh, and Austin Espedy is out of the race.
Oh, no. What happened to him? I'm checking. Oh, it was the S's, similar to what we saw with Quinn.
Oh.
But he wasn't able to catch it.
Let's take a look at this because this is a big moment, and this is one of those things that is one of those object lessons in the 49. He just ends up getting a little bit loose and keeps the power down coming out of the S's. You'll see it right here. Watch his hands on the wheel and watch the attitude of the car.
The inside wheels are actually going to touch the grass. We can't see it from this onboard, but he is going to clip it. Wow, that happened so fast.
He was loose the entire time, Joe. Loose. As soon as he went over the crest, he was loose and facing and turning right. And then it snapped on him.
Wow.
Just an update on Quinn and Barnes. They've got about 13 seconds to get up to Schmeier. So with 10 laps to go, they'll have to be really, really on it to make it up to the podium positions. But it would just take a minor drop from Schmeier. But I tell you what, guys, I'm going down to my local garage tomorrow to buy some Firestone tires because they clearly run forever. And that warms my Scottish car, I'm sure.
Thank you, Jackie Stewart. So, as we continue to watch the last 9...
You recognize that one.
Yeah, the last 9 laps to go. Quinn is our main battle and has been for much of this race, frankly. Brian Barnes has been not the one chasing him for much of it. It's been Wade Hayes, who is just the car that you see flashes of back in the background. Barnes has been, instead, the hard charger of much of this race. From 11th now to 5th, looking for 4th. Ryan Steele doing similarly, by the way, up to 8th position from 14th.
Well, also, Liam Quinn actually started right ahead of Brian Barnes. So these guys are familiar grid foes. So the fact that they're fighting tooth and nail for that 4th position is, I mean, it's pretty awesome actually when you talk about it, and quite frankly, very impressive from Brian Barnes considering he ran into trouble early. Liam Quinn a little bit slow through the penultimate corner. Brian Barnes is going to peek his nose in. He's going to say, hey, Liam, if you do that again, I'm going to be up your inside. And he might actually try something here into the 90 if he's daring enough.
Does he want to do it here, though, because he knows that it all is down to that run down the backstretch? Yeah, I don't think that was a serious attempt. Just tries to put him off, and it works as he takes the apex away from Liam Quinn. He'll be right underneath him. But can he use the slipstream enough? Can he time it right as they climb the hill? The laps are starting to slip away quickly. Remember, they're only just over a minute, so there's not much time here. He lost a little time in the S's, but now he gets it right back. He's on a tear. He starts to blink away on my screen, though. Where is he? And he's just to the inside as we see a flash of him. This has got to be horrifying for Quinn, as Barnes is just going to get by, but nobody could see it.
Quinn has no idea where he is, and neither do we. He's trying to dodge him. Unfortunately, this is the perils of sim racing that happens sometimes. Brian Barnes has made the pass, and look at this. He clips that inside grass, much like Liam Quinn did on the previous laps. Quinn, oh my goodness, gets almost a tank swapper when he gets on the brakes.
I thought that was an enormous accident coming there, but I tell you what, Liam Quinn, that must have been full opposite lock to hold on to that one, but he did hold on to it. This is, like you say, how distracting when you got a car blinking out there. It's just like you said, Adam, one of those challenges of sim racing occasionally, but oh, that was an enormous save there from Liam Quinn.
Don't think he's going to like that at all. Does he try and fight back? He's looking decent here coming up the backstretch. Barnes will be looking in his mirrors. He hasn't moved to the inside. He's going to let him have it. Quinn is going to try and go for the position one more time. He's given space at the apex, but we've seen many a driver manage to pull off of the carousel quite well, and Barnes does so.
A great exit from Barnes that time around. Liam Quinn, you can tell he's frustrated behind the wheel. He's peeking out every opportunity he gets. Look at how shallow he is into the penultimate corner. Brian Barnes taking a much wider line. Liam Quinn's going to take a wide line into the final corner. I think he might have gotten Brian Barnes offline a little bit. He's definitely going to take a look here into the 90.
But if he does that, could Barnes pull the over-under? We've seen him pull moves like this previously. He breaks a little bit early, guns it off the turn. He can't get down to the apex, but he carries speed well. Are they going to go side by side? They're going to try it. He doesn't pinch him down. He gives him plenty of space. It switches back, and now he has to give way as Quinn can't quite keep himself in fourth.
Not often you see two guys going side by side into the S's and come out the other side clean, and it requires massive respect from both drivers, and you can tell it's there between these guys. Wow, it's going to go right down to the wire, and Barnes, he's really charged up to get here, and well, Quinn is giving it as good as he gets.
It takes a massive something to do that, but Liam Quinn still right on top of him, and here comes Wade Hayes. All this fighting has distracted the two of them, and their pace has dropped. Hayes could find himself some redemption after being overtaken by both of these cars. Once again, struggling out of the exit of the final corner. Brian Barnes is a sitting duck down into the first turn. This didn't work for Quinn last time. Did he learn anything different?
It's tight as they exit. Quinn actually has a nose ahead, and Brian Barnes is going to let him go. He's going to possibly try and follow him up the S's and get a good exit. Let's see whether Liam Quinn does a little bit of a brake check as they go into the crest. No, he doesn't. Brian Barnes has a decent run here, and so does Wade Hayes tucked in behind them. Liam gets a little bit loose on the exit of the corner. That means Brian Barnes is going to come alongside. He's got a wheel on him. He's got two wheels on him. That's going to be heavy braking into the outer loop here, and here we go. Brian Barnes deep on the brakes on the inside. He's going to try and go through. Wade Hayes tucked in behind them. Liam Quinn cuts him off a little bit, but Brian Barnes is not yet clear.
The momentum goes in favor of Quinn. He's got the inside. He's got the speed. Both of them braking at about the same time, side by side through the corner. Neither's willing to give way. Quinn squirms under power. He still tries to carry the speed the long way around, tear off the final corner, and he manages to do it. Wade Hayes has the popcorn in hand, watching and waiting for the chance to try and strike. He hasn't found it yet, but he might get it soon, because once again, wheel to wheel between these two for fourth place. This time, it's going to be in the hands of Barnes.
Great move there.
Peter.
Great move there from Barnes. Just set that up into the 90. Thought he was maybe going to get beaten down there into turn one, but really took a big risk on the brakes. Just modulated the brake pedal and just parked it on the apex. Great stuff from all concerned. This is what we've been heating up to. 4 to go here at Watkins Glen. Who is going to make it? They break at the access road there, and it's going to be Quinn. I tell you what, Quinn is really strong there on the brakes coming down into the outer loop.
He's going to swing back to the outside. Does he hold that left lane? No. He's going to leave it open. Could that be a mistake? No. Brian Barnes decides better of it. So their order now: Quinn 4th, Barnes 5th, and Hayes back there in 6th, who somehow is dropping back in the midst of this. So afterburners are on here for both Quinn and Barnes.
Yeah, they're putting in some pretty quick laps at this point. It's very impressive to watch. Liam Quinn on the edge. Brian Barnes also on the edge. Brian Barnes looks like his rear tires are starting to be very unpleasant at this point in the race, as I think he might have to back off a little bit and try and cool them down. Once again, we're at 4 to go this time by.
I think that exit out of the 90 is so important. We saw Barnes able to make the move there into the 90, but of course that block pass compromised his exit, and then he lost it by the time they get to the outer loop. So when we come into the final lap, you've got to be thinking so far ahead, because if you want to make that move into the 90, well, to be able to defend it down the straight is going to be really, really tough. So what are these drivers going to do? This is all about mental brain power as well as the physical prowess behind the wheel, and impossible to call right now.
2 laps to go at this point. Challenger crossed the line just recently. These 2 won't be able to complete, these 3 won't be able to complete every lap of the race, but these positions are still up for grabs onto the front stretch. This is the farthest apart we've seen them for a while. Quinn leading in 4th, Barnes in P5, Wade Hayes still attached and still could pick up the pieces.
Yeah, they got to realize that it's 2 to go. They got to do the math a little bit and realize that they're a lap down. They've got to figure that out. But look at this. Liam Quinn is starting to pull a little bit, and Wade Hayes trying to get up right onto the back of Brian Barnes to try and drag himself up to Liam Quinn. They do have a lap car ahead of them. I believe that's Lynn Kinchlow that's tucked in ahead of them.
Good job. Moves over, makes it. You can see there's a big battle going on there. Great respect. That's what it's all about. Just to let these guys get on with it, and they get on with it. They shall. And I tell you what, Quinn looking so strong there in the outer loop. And I think if you can be strong there, that just gives you the little edge to be able to defend.
White flag is out, and Christian had one of the first mistakes I've seen all race. He slid it all the way through the first corner. He is so far ahead at this point. It's 42 seconds back to the only other car on the lead lap, Eric Smith. So despite his small drama, I think he is still okay. This man has been untouchable, not just in this race, but in this season. I believe, I'll need to check if this is a record number of American region wins in a single season that he has set. Certainly is the most winningest driver at this point in the series. Has been for a number of races, looking very Hamilton-esque as the number 37. We'll have to give a shout if those other cars start to erupt, but for now we've got to watch the victory and the championship claimed for this man. He won in the European region last season. This season, it's going to be in the Americas. Our champion and winner here today in the 1968 U.S. Grand Prix.
Back to Wade Hayes, who's got the best opportunity on Brian Barnes, but it's into the final 2 corners. Looks like Liam Quinn's going to maintain that 4th position. Brian Barnes actually takes it a little bit deep into the penultimate corner, is able to maintain that traction, though. He's going to put the power down. Who's going to take it to the line? I believe they're going to stick in place. That's going to be 4th for Liam Quinn, 5th for Brian Barnes, and 6th for Wade Hayes.
Schmeier is well ahead of them. Finishes the last car on the podium. And as the rest of them stream across, in fact, only Kevin Hill is the last car one lap down.
Eric Smith just finished for second place.
Only other car on the lead lap. No other battles on the track, unfortunately, as we did have, it appears to be 20 finishers, only 3 retirements, and a car that I'm sure many felt doom and gloom for. That is a nice feat, I think, especially for this man. As he celebrates, we're going to take a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. Stick around because you'll see all the upcoming races here on GSRC. Welcome back to Watkins Glen, getting the glamour shot down at the line for the number 37 kinetic car of Christian Challoner, who took the win today and clinched the championship, we believe potentially for the first time with 2 races to go. We'll double check on that stat to see if that's happened in the Americas region any time before. Eric Smith was the only other car on the lead lap, a distant 41 seconds behind him. In second place, Jeff Schmeier, first car lap down. He actually went from 6th place to 3rd. Kind of a quiet but well-earned run for the podium for him. Liam Quinn and Brian Barnes, 4th and 5th, up from 10th and 11th, just stormed up through the midfield. Wade Hayes was behind them in 6th. He was trying to fight with Quinn for much of it and just couldn't hold on to the pair of them. Kevin Hill was P7, last one on 1 lap down, with Ryan Steele, in 8th, climbing up from 14th. A nice job from him. Lyndon Swaby, peg leg, going backwards from 5th to 9th, and Adam Halleck rounds out your top 10.
Brian McGreevy tried to battle with Halleck towards the end of that race, but ended up falling backwards. Bob Beltrami just couldn't quite make it to Brian McGreevy towards the end of that race, ended up falling yet another lap down, and he's our first of our 3 lap down competitors. Nick Kuhn ended up falling backwards as well, starting off at 13th, starting off at 17th, climbing to 13th due to the troubles that were happening ahead of him. William Fletcher ends up getting a little bit of damage later on in the race and drops back down into the 14th position. Then we have Jason Wallet, who finishes in 15th, with David Hall in 16th. Rob Gall ends up in 17th position today. Wayne Hutchison was able to keep it clean and finish in the 18th position, with Lynn Kinchlow finishing 19th and Brett Trocine in 20th.
Rounding out our runners then in 21st, it was Austin Espity 11 laps back, Dick Mueller in 22nd, and finally Aaron Roofs in 23rd.
Only 3 DNFs today, but Christian Challoner now joins us in the booth. Christian, congratulations not only on the victory today, but from what we understand, you have clinched the championship. How does it feel?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I actually had no idea that that was actually going to be even possible today, and I think it was about lap 60 or something like that. John actually mentioned to me, he was like, "If you make it to 81, then you've actually won." And I was like, "What? Really?" So yeah, that's pretty cool. And I mean, yeah, it's fun. It's fun to kind of have that sort of sorted out. I was going to say before we get to like kind of the more dice roll sort of races, but I mean, this is this was a pretty tough one, but I'm glad that it's kind of sorted before we get to the last one, because obviously Auto Club, Oval, IndyCar, I mean, we saw with Indy, it can kind of go either way. You know, 1 minute you can be at the front, and then the next minute you can be wrecked out. So it's cool to kind of have that sort of sewn up so early, and yeah, it's pretty fun. I mean, this was a really fun race. I know, obviously we ran Milwaukee last year with the 49. It was really fun there, and it's yeah, exactly the same deal again this time around. Really like brutally long race though. Obviously nobody did a pit stop unless they had an incident or whatnot. So it was actually almost dead on. Well, my timer says it was 2 hours and 22 seconds. So yeah, that's pretty long, especially because you normally get at least one pit stop for a little bit of a break, and I know it's only like 15-20 seconds. So yeah, it's kind of crazy to not have that at all.
Well, you say that this was a tough one from your end, and yes, this car is extremely tough to drive for that long. But from our view, it looked like you had such control the whole race. Other than a mistake on the last lap into turn one, I don't think we saw any dramas. Was there any that we missed?
There was a couple of times coming into the carousel where I kind of overshot the braking point. But it worked out because there was kind of two lines to do there. You could either really bomb it in super deep, and that wasn't what I was normally doing. What I was normally doing was kind of trying to hug around the inside line. So if I did make a mistake, like I did a couple of times, I could just bomb it in, and it actually wasn't too bad. And yeah, the last lap was. I was kind of trying to mess around. I was actually trying to go for some style points, and yeah, I realized it probably wasn't my greatest of ideas to do that, so I kind of tried to dial it down a bit, and it didn't really work out the way that I wanted it to. But at least I didn't stack it, so that's the main thing.
Well, from what we can tell, the first driver ever to be both European and America's region champion. Well done. Who would you like to thank for this momentous achievement?
I got to say big thank you to all the guys at Kinetic for really kind of helping out throughout the entire season with cars setups, especially the kind of things that I don't normally run very often. So last round, Silver Crown, Will Leslie really kind of just gave me a setup to drive. I mean, me and him chatted about it a bit in the week, but all the legwork was done by him, and he put together a basically a rocket ship. I mean, it flew through the field. We picked up both those wins, and that was really cool. And then really the guys that have kind of helped me out with these sort of oddball cars through my Discord and whatnot. So for this car, I got to give a big shout out to Rafael Dorado, because it was he who kind of clued me in on how you kind of got to drive the thing and how you got to set it up. And yeah, I think last year obviously we had that bit of an advantage with the silly camber car at Milwaukee, but this time it was all kind of having a bit of an inside man, and what an inside man to have. You know, I know him and Mick have been having some really close races at the front of the broadcast field, and yeah, I've got to give him a big shout out because he's helped me out a lot.
Well, it's been a joy watching you out on track, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you some more in the final races of the season, sir.
Thank you.
As Christian Challoner, winner and newly crowned champion here in the majors. Up next, Adam has caught up with the only other driver to be able to run the same amount of laps as him, Eric Smith.
Yeah, Eric, we were talking during the break that, I mean, Christian Challenger's pace was very impressive, but your pace was absolutely no slouch either. Your fastest lap being your final lap of 106.367. Very impressive stuff today. How'd you like the car?
It's a blast to drive, but you got to be super careful as soon as you try to be cool and start pushing. instantly punishes you. So just constantly, every single lap, I'm telling myself, just go slow, just drive in slow motion.
Absolutely. And it looked like for the first 9 laps, you're able to keep up with Christian, but then at one point, it just looked like into the braking zone for the outer loop. He just seemed to slip away. What do you think made the difference there?
He just doesn't make mistakes. I gotta drive 100% to hit his lap times, and he's cruising around at 85%. So it just adds up over time.
Absolutely. And talk to me about traffic today as you were able to lap the field in many cars a couple of times. How tough was it out there to deal with traffic, especially in these cars that are so line sensitive?
It wasn't too bad. Everybody's getting out of the way pretty early because everybody out there knows how hard this car is to drive. You don't want to take any risks whatsoever by racing somebody you don't need to. So everybody was pretty good out there.
Well, Eric, you came home with a great second place finish today. Is there anyone you want to thank for your podium position today?
I got to shout out Jeff Drake for making the setup from the Majors garage. I just loaded it up. I made a few changes to it, but it was a really good baseline to start from, and went from there, and it was pretty good.
All right. Well, thanks for talking to us, Eric, and we look forward to seeing you in the last couple of rounds.
All right, thank you.
That was Eric Smith, our second place finisher. And it looks like we have Jeff Schmeier who's going to have a chat with us as well. He's going to talk to Peter.
Jeff Schmeier, welcome to the Global Sim Racing Channel commentary box. Congratulations on a podium. That looked like a long race out there. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it was a really long race. I had a really good start compared to some other people, and was able to just keep it up there. I had a really solid setup, so it wasn't too squirrely. So I was just able to just keep it under me for the 107 or 8 laps.
You'll be feeling dizzy by now as well. I mean, how did you find it in the Lotus 49? Just trying to hustle it around there. It's a busy car to drive. What were your feelings of it?
Yeah, it's a really tough car. You have to really get on the brakes early, and luckily our setup was good enough. We were able to power out of the corners instead of it getting kind of loose. So it was nice to be able to just kind of relax, especially when I found myself kind of in no man's land. So it was easy for me to just kind of take it slow and steady and get a third place.
You certainly did a great job doing that. Before we let you go, here to go and enjoy that podium, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to live here on GSRC and the iRacing Esports Network?
Yeah, of course. Shout out to my team. They're an awesome group of guys. It was nice to get Dog Bear a good bit of screen time tonight, since we're usually like kind of mid-pack. So it was cool for us and for me and me and Brian to get up there and get a top 5. Shout out to my girlfriend. She stayed up and watched the race. My parents stayed up and watched the race. Just want to say I love you guys.
Oh, what a great team. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for coming to join us here in the commentary box, and good luck for your next race.
All right. Thank you, sir.
That was our third place finisher, Jeff Schmeier, who probably didn't get the screen time maybe that he could have wanted, but then maybe he doesn't want it and just wanted a nice quiet race to be able to celebrate this podium. But we are going to close up as well after round 12 has now completed. And once again, we want to remind you about the charity that they have been raising money for in this race, and that is METAvivor, who you can find them at metavivor.org. We've got a link in the description below if you want to check out and see how you can help over there. Thanks goes out to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcast. You can see them listed here on your screen. Additional thanks to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. We've got her information there as well. Thanks to the team today, Sean, Adam, Peter, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com or check out info on our social media outlets. Twitter is at GSR Channel, Facebook, Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram, GSRC_Graham. We got a merchandise store, link down below, gsrc.storenvy.com. And while you're down there, make sure and subscribe to the channel. The next race, we're heading off to Australia. If you think this one is tough, oh boy, Bathurst with the Australian Supercars. That'll be Sunday, October 18th at 7:45 p.m. Eastern. They need plenty of practice to get up to speed for those. We have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. In just a couple hours' time, we'll be heading over to New Zealand for the BMW Race Driver E Series. So come and join us for that if you like to stay up late here in North America, or if it's an appropriate viewing time elsewhere in the world. But until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.